8 years ago at this very racetrack, the newly born Championship Auto Racing Series, led by Jack McNally and Chris Regal, arrived to do battle for the first time with one vision in mind: to provide the best late model drivers in the Southeast a chance to prove themselves against the best comp there is. It's safe to say that nearly a decade later, that vision is alive now more than ever. Of some of the most tenacious veterans and rising young stars have converged once again with the backing of a powerhouse ownership group to begin a new era in late model stock. Drivers know that to win in the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour, it's already hard enough, but to win at Southern National, well, it is anything but a walk in the park. Good afternoon, everybody, from Southern National Motorsports Park in Kinley, North Carolina, where welcome you to Flow Racing's coverage of the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour, and we are thrilled to take you with us flag to flag through this running of the Per Year Tank Lines 225. My name is Blake McCandless, and I'm joined alongside by my good friend and broadcast partner, and Eric Brendan. And Eric, I'm not sure if I can properly put into words the amount of excitement and anticipation that has finally culminated in this day's arrival, from the drivers to the crews to the fans both here and watching at home. There has been a patchy and buzz around this season opener, and luckily for all of us, we don't have to wait any longer. It's finally here.
You said it. Last night was like Christmas Eve as a child all over again. It's remarkable that this day has finally come, and you said it, Blake, energy. That's what's been behind this tour, granted, quite some time. As a matter of fact, one of the members of the ownership group, Jeff Burton, is here on the track property grounds, and he gave credit where it, of course, was due to Jack McNally, who brought it to the point where this series was so attractive that a group of such power and such nature would want to step in and make sure that its security and liberty were still in a good and positive light. Jack McNally is still part of the day-to-day operations, as is Gilly Dubinsky. But all of that energy that has been behind this day, this season opener, and as you mentioned, of all places, it's now come to a bit of a head, if you will. This is a whole season of racing action. There's a lot to be gained, also a lot to be lost. It's up to the drivers, because we've got two stacked fields of pro late models and late model stocks. How are they going to be able to handle that energy and that pressure themselves when it matters most?
Pro late model field in series history at 24 cars that have made their way onto the property here to compete for you this afternoon, and 32 cars in late model stocks, all of which were not promised when they got on the property that they would start. What? They are all starting in this field. So 32 late model stocks will be competing for you. As far as housekeeping is concerned, in a couple of minutes, or in rather moments, we'll begin driver introductions and get that rolling through. Of course, pre-race ceremonies will follow suit. And of course, at 3 p.m., we imagine the start of the Per Year Tank Lines 225 to culminate with 100 laps. The Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour Pro Late Models, followed by 125 laps for the late model stocks. And we talked about us two here in the broadcast booth. Let's welcome in the third member of our broadcast crew here down in the pit lane, Jacqueline Drake. Hello, Jacqueline.
Hi, guys. Thanks so much for having me. It's truly an honor to be a part of this season opener in the ninth season at the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour, and of course, joining you guys up in the booth under this new ownership of the series.
To all the reports that you'll have down on the lane, so many drivers so excited to get things rolling here. And we have been rolling here for a little bit, Eric. We just had model and late model stock qualifying going on just a couple of moments ago. And one of the awards to take it out is, of course, going to be our pole sitters for both the Hedgecock Racing stocks and the Mahle Pole Award for the Pro Late Models. As let's take a look at Brendan Queen's fastest lap to put him at the top of the charts.
Yeah, this certainly was the best and most fastest drivers that have been all late model stock racing. However, the fact that Brendan Queen was able to come out here, this is an opportunity to give some of you fans a chance to see how this track navigates in a late model stock. Brendan Queen actually timed in fourth quickest earlier today in qualifying, but it's a chance for you to be able to see how these cars get around here. Queen came across the line there with a lap of record of a 15.482 for that in that session. But as a matter of fact, the driver who ended up grabbing the Hedgecock Racing pole, it's our reigning Cars Tour champion. Speaking of, 4 of the 6 Cars Tour titleists are here today, and they are intending to run the whole season. What a championship defense, or should I say start to a championship defense for Carson Quapple to be able to grab pole here in front of this stacked field.
It certainly is, and it goes to show you that not much is changing in terms of that operation and how they're planning to run this season. Late models, it was Justin Kreider who went a couple tenths faster than what we had in our late model stocks, in a 15.187 for Justin Kreider puts him at the top of the charts for that. Well, when we come back, driver introductions are up next here on Flow Racing's coverage, the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour. Back with you here from Lucama, North Carolina National Motorsports Park, and we are all anticipating the start of the Perrier Tank Line's 225 and all that it has entailed. Blake McCandless, Eric Brennan, and of course Jacqueline Drake will be down on the pits for you here in this race. And one thing, as we're kind of awaiting some of the opening ceremonies, Eric, that I think is pretty important to play out is the fact that we've touched on it a little bit here at the track, is that these drivers did not have planned practice days. Some were able to come on Thursday. The track saw some of the weather that was approaching on Friday and made a session available for both the late model stocks and the pro late models on Thursday night. Some drivers were in attendance, some were not. And then, of course, yesterday, which was intended to be a full practice day, unfortunately got washed out due to weather. So a lot of drivers here not necessarily with a ton of experience. And, you know, that's usually something you would want at the beginning of a racing season.
Absolutely. It's been quite unique to hear how some of these drivers aren't necessarily where they may stand. The good news is we're getting closer to green flag time. This is one of 10 double headers on the Solid Rock Carrier Cars Tour slate with the late model stocks and pro late models. With that, let's introduce you to our starting field for today's Perrier Tank Line's 225, the 100 lapper pro late model feature event that features 24 cars strong, tune of racing. Starting in the number 24th position, the driver hails from Fredericksburg, Virginia, driving for J&L Motorsports, Logan Jones. Starting in the 23rd position, veteran racer Virginia, racing for Top Gun Motorsports, driving car number 8, Rusty Skews. Starting outside of row number 11, a late add to the pro late model field to expand the field to 24 cars strong, able to time in on the pylon, driving car number 97, Dylan Garner. Starting in the 21st position, a driver hails from Stanley, North Carolina, driving for CV Partners Sports number 43, Nick Loden. Starting in the 20th position today, a third-generation racer, made 2 pro late model starts 1 year ago. Looking to kick off his 2023 season strong. Number 48, Jeff Batten. Starting in the 19th spot tonight, out of Burlington, North Carolina, in the JFCO Racing, number 44, Justin Whitaker. Starting in the 18th position, a young driver who's racing for E33 Motorsports out of Ellicott, Maryland, driving car number 5, Zach Fowler. Hailing from Canover, North Carolina, driving the family-owned 03, starting in the 17th spot, Kyle Campbell. One of the many youngsters in today's pro late model field out of Williamsburg, Virginia, racing for the Accelerated Development Team, driving car number 7, Tristan McKee. Starting in the 15th spot this afternoon, driving car number 29 out of Catamount, Florida. Also running for E33 Motorsports, Logan Boyett. Starting outside of row number 7, the only driver pulling double duty not only this afternoon but all season long. In the Pro Late Models, racing for Wilson Motorsports in the Yahoo number 28, Isabella Robusto. Starting in the 13th position to match the car number out of Nova Scotia for King Racing, won the season finale 1 year ago, Austin McDonald. Starting in the 12th position is a driver who has moved up in the late model competition after having much success in Legend cars. He is a former track champion at Tri-County Speedway in Legends, driving the 43H, Joshua Horniman. Two-time Pro Late Model winner in 2022, finished second in the championship standings, moves over to Highland Motorsports for 2023, driving the number 96 out of Mooresville, Caden Quapple. And that will bring us up into our top 10 for today's Pro Late Model 100-lap season opener. The driver who is wheeling the Setzer Racing and Development number 6 out of Newton, North Carolina, George Phillips. A driver who ran the full late model stock car slate, now moving over to the Ashley Krim Racing number 24. Out of North Carolina, Carter Langley. Starting on the outside of row number 4. Wheeling the number 19 machine, New England racer out of New Hampshire. Driving for Bobby Weber Racing, Brian Kruzek. Out of Mooresville, North Carolina, in the TH Motorsports number 15. Driving his Chevrolet from the 7th starting position here tonight, Brett Suggs. The other 15 machine in today's field. This one will be scored as a 15H from Herman, Maine, a former past National Super Late Model Series champion, Mike Hopkins. And now into our top 5, and this driver will pretty much wheel anything you strap him into. Today, in the DLP Motorsports NASCAR rival Chevy, driving the number 5B out of Mooresville, Gavin Boschel. One of the many competitors to move up from Legend cars to Pro Late Models after timing in 4th in qualifying. Out of Denver, North Carolina, for the family-owned team, Luke Morey. The driver who timed in 3rd earlier on this afternoon, driving for Anthony Campy Racing, fresh off a Pro Late Model win down at the World Series of Asphalt, driving car number 81, Katie Hedinger. And that will bring us up to our front row for today's Pro Late Model season opener. And the driver who was 43 thousandths of a second away from pole, a strong qualifying effort for the AALH Motorsports number 9, Ashton Higgins. And the driver who was able to claim the Male pole position to kick off his 2023 season with a lap of record of a 15.187. Your pole sitter out of Statesville, North Carolina for Robin Kreider Racing, Justin Kreider. And that is your starting field for today's Per Your Tank Line's 225 Pro Late Model 100 Lapper here at Southern National Motorsports Park. And we understand Justin Kreider, our pole sitter, standing by trackside with Jacqueline Drake.
Justin, first off, congratulations on a pole. The look on your face really says it all. I know just how much these mean for your family team, but what's the game plan to close out the deal today?
Yeah, this is awesome. I really didn't expect that, but we got up there now. Now we just got to stay up there. I think strategy is just going to be to try to ride, save some tires because this place is really abrasive. But my family put a great car underneath me, so it's now my time to go out there and do the job. So can't thank everybody enough. Can't thank all the sponsors, JDS Glass, Service Partners, my family, my wife, everybody. They put me in this car. They allow me to do what I love to do. And now now I get a chance to go get him one.
Justin Kreider going to bring home that Pro Late Model Molly Pole Award.
And that is your Pro Late Model starting field. And now let's meet the 32 drivers that will make up the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour Late Model Stock opening race lineup. And starting in 32nd, of which all 32 cars on the property will start this race tonight. Your first starter back here in the 32nd position, the 2020 and 19 Cars Late Model Stock Car most popular driver from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the Palace Point Chevrolet. This is Jessica Can. Starting in the 31st position from Franklinton, North Carolina, it's his Swang Song Tour in late model stock car racing. This is Brian Obinski. Starting in the 30th starting spot for Cook Racing Technologies, the Pay Cafe Chevrolet from Mooresville, North Carolina. Say hello to Carson Brown. Starting in the 29th position, the fourth generation racer for Two Boroughs Performance Shop. He's in a Chevrolet from Wilkesboro, North Carolina. This is Dylan Wilson. Starting on the outside of row 14 in the 28th position from Sanford, North Carolina, the Fayetteville Heating and Air Ford. This is Jody Messimer. Starting in 27th, the ALL Construction Chevrolet from Maysville, West Virginia. This is Jason Kitzmiller. After Pro Late Model introduction, she had to make her way over here for the late model stocks to drive the Mobile One TRD Toyota from Fort Mill, South Carolina. Say hello to Isabella Robusto. This driver driving the Mitchell Moat Performance Toyota, sponsored by Aristocrat from Easley, South Carolina. The number 20, this is Joshua Dickens. Starting in 24th, the 2020 Cars Late Model Stock Car Champion from Trinity, North Carolina, the Eatman Mobile Homes Ford. This is Jared Fryer. Starting in 23rd for Derek Peebles Motorsports from Bristow, Virginia. Say hello to Jonathan Finley. Starting in 22nd for Mike Darn Racing from Youngsville, North Carolina, driving the ABC Hosiery and Apparel Chevrolet. Say hello to Andrew Grady. Starting in the 21st position, making up a row of the Touring 12, the 2022 Cars Tour Late Model Stock most popular driver for the Hefner's Towing and Recovery Chevrolet from Dallas, North Carolina. This is Jacob Hefner. Starting in 20th, the Miracle Dental Center Chevrolet from Indian Trail, North Carolina. Say hello to Zach Miracle. Starting in 19th, the Jerry Hunt Supercenter Chevrolet from Lexington, North Carolina, making his late model stock debut in the Cars Tour. This is Ronnie Bassett Jr. Starting in 18th, and car number 67, the Jones Utilities Ford from Sharon, South Carolina. This is Cameron Bolin. Starting in 17th, the Pimbleton Forest Products Toyota will be piloted by this driver from Amelia, Virginia. Say hello to Landon Pimbleton. Starting in 16th, the number 59 Texas Logbook Chevrolet from Wellesley, Massachusetts. This is Blake Lothian. Starting in 15th, the Bull City Performance Jeffco Motorsports Ford, piloted by this 23-year-old out of Durham, North Carolina. This is Tate Fogelman. Starting in 14th, the Thunder Road Harley-Davidson Chevrolet from Alton, Virginia. Say hello to Brandon Pierce. Starting in the 13th position for Top Gun Motorsports from Mechanicsville, Virginia, the 18-year-old is Chase Burrow. Starting in 12th, the runner-up in the Cars Tour points last season for Chad Bryant Racing, the Town Bank Breed and Concrete Chevrolet is piloted by this driver from Hampton, Virginia, Connor Hall. Behind the wheel of the Autos by Nelson Toyota for Nelson Motorsports from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Say hello to Cale Gale. And now to meet the top 10 starters for the Puryear Tank Lions 225. Starting in 10th for Mike Darn Racing, the Speed Ranch Setups Ford from Aledo, Texas. This is Caden Honeycutt. Starting in 9th, now driving for RNS Race Cars and the Solid Rock Carriers Ford from Madison, North Carolina. This is Bobby McCarty. Starting in 8th, car number 81, the Convenience Tire and Auto Chevrolet from Manassas, Virginia. This is Minnie Tyrell. Starting in 7th, the Solid Rock Carriers Chevrolet, piloted by this 22-year-old out of Manassas, Virginia. Say hello to Mason Diaz. Starting in 6th in the Victorian Senior Care Ford from Randleman, North Carolina, this is Ryan Wilson. And now starting in 5th in the Aaron Sales and Lease Ford out of Supply, North Carolina, the 38-year-old, this is Chad McCumbee. Starting in 4th, the Lee Pulliam Performance Chevrolet, sponsored by Best Repair Company from Chesapeake, Virginia. This is Brendan Butterbean Queen. Starting 3rd in the Puryear Tank Lions Ford from Raleigh, North Carolina. Say hello to Deke McCaskill. And now to meet your front row, driving the Leisure Time Rental Chevrolet from Statesville, North Carolina, this is Ryan Millington. And your pole sitter setting a time of 15.428 seconds. The Bass Pro Shop Chevrolet from Junior Motorsports out of Mooresville, North Carolina. Your defending champion, Carson Quapple. And Jacqueline Drake will be by in just a moment, catching up with our Hedgecock Racing Pole Award winner in Carson Quapple. Jacqueline?
Carson, congratulations on this pole. Coming off of a championship from last year and going straight into leading the field to green in the season opener. What does that mean to you and your Junior Motorsports camp?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a confidence booster for us starting just this race and obviously the whole season, starting the pole here. And hopefully we can just keep it up right around top 5, top 10 and be there at the end and try to drive the Bass Pro Shop Junior Motorsports Chevrolet to the front.
Congratulations. Carson Quapple going to start up front in the late model stock Hedgecock Racing Pole Award.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And Blake, I think when we were handicapping the field in some of our prep work, it was no surprise that the reigning champion was going to be high atop the running order. However, there was an event that was held. It was the Icebreaker, which you and I were fortunate enough to be there for. And to be quite honest, Junior Motorsports, they just didn't seem to be as competitive as we thought. Perhaps we maybe missed the setup there at Florence Motor Speedway that afternoon, but I think that lap time that Carson laid down in qualifying, that's going to put all those wonders and concerns to rest. And his championship defense appears to be starting off on the right foot with the Hedgecock Racing Pole Award.
Well, I think that shows you that this Junior Motorsports group is just going to go back to work. And they were somewhat perplexed by what happened to them at the Icebreaker there, just because of everything that was surrounding it. They didn't change much from the South Carolina 400 in either one of those cars that Carson Quapple or Dale Earnhardt Jr. was driving, but just somehow they missed it. But you know what great teams do? They bounce back, and they show up with a lot of speed, and they don't let that affect them, and that's exactly what Carson Kvapil did today.
With that, we are just a few moments away from the first green flag of 2023. We're going to send it down trackside to Jacqueline Drake to begin our pre-race ceremonies.
Thanks, guys. We'll get started here as we ask everyone to rise as we'll do the invocation by Mr. Joe Lewis.
Let us pray together. Our Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for the opportunity in this free country to enjoy the sports of motor racing. Father, I pray today that you would protect every single person within the sound of my voice, every worker, every driver, every fan, that this would be a great, great, great race. And Father, we thank you there's a race to run in life, and we put you, Lord, in first place every time. In Jesus' name, amen.
And we ask, please remain standing for our nation's national anthem by the Cars Tour very own, Mr. Keith Porter. And here he is.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, guys. And we'll get the cars rolling and out on the front stretch in just a moment. And you'll hear from one of the new owners of the series right after this break.
We are back with you here from Southern National Motorsports Park for the Puryear Tank Lines 225. Cars are getting gridded up to start our Pro Late Model feature here momentarily. But before we do that, as Jacqueline alluded to before the break, she has one of these new owners of the Cars Tour standing down and ready to talk.
Yeah, guys, we talk a lot about the new ownership and what that looks like to the Cars Tour. And one guy standing right here beside me, Mr. Jeff Burton. First off, thank you so much for coming on board and supporting short track racing. But I know you have a few things that you'd like to share with the fans of the series, the veterans in the field that have been here for many years.
Yeah, well, on behalf of Dale Earnhardt Jr., myself, Kevin Harvick, Justin Marks, we are honored to be here. It is a pleasure to work with this group. This is some of the best racing you'll ever see. We want to expose it, show it to as many people as possible, and more importantly is the fans. I mean, look at this place. This place is the back straightaway. The turns are completely packed. A lot of people in the grandstands. That's what racing is all about, is having great racing, having fans, and we are super excited to be part of it.
You obviously have had a strong involvement in motorsports your entire life, and even your son Harrison racing here at the Cars Tour in the inaugural season. How does it feel to be an owner now?
It's pretty cool. I mean, it's I never thought about doing that. You know, when Dale Jr. approached us, we're like, yeah, let's do it because Jack and his team have done such a great job with the Cars Tour. It's an incredibly strong foundation. Hopefully we can build on it and only help it. But the main reason we're here is because we're race fans, and on top of that, we grew up racing short tracks. We're just short track racers that got lucky, and we're just really, really excited to be part of it and see where we can take it.
Well, I think we got lucky having you guys now on board. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for being here for the season opener. And as you guys spoke on in the booth, the Puryear Trucking, the owners are here on site. They have been a big supporter of the series for many years, and one of the operation managers that works in the office right beside me, Trey Thacker. First off, thank you for your support in the series and coming on board Puryear as a title sponsor, increasing the purse for today's race. But what is the driving motivation to support the Cars Tour?
Look, we're involved very much in racing, and we love the Cars Tour series. We're on a platform across the whole industry. Puryear as a whole is coast to coast now. So we support local driving, local drivers here, and it's a good platform for us to be at. We can't do it without the drivers, and somebody's got to support those guys as we support our people.
Yeah, speaking of how you said that we can't do it without the drivers, but we can't do anything in this world without truckers. So thank you to Puryear. And back up to you guys in the booth. We're still getting the cars situated here on the front straightaway, and soon enough, we'll be off and racing.
That is the hope, Jacqueline, as you can see, as Jeff Burton was alluding to a little bit earlier, and he was not lying when looking out at this racetrack all across the property here, Eric. There are fans lined up. I know I was looking at all the social media posts that, hey, there's only a few parking spots around this racetrack that are available if you want to be able to sit at your truck. And what a great vantage point to watch a race from, to basically be able to tailgate and watch a race at a 4/10 mile racetrack.
That was the point that I was about to make. Usually you go to a sporting event, you tailgate, then you go watch the event. Here you could quite literally do both all around the racetrack, and you can see they have not left any room. There's not even room to squeeze a motorcycle between some of these spots with the amount of fans that have come out here. A couple things to touch on there based on the fantastic job that Jacqueline Drake did down there trackside. First of all, Jeff Burton. Happy to say Jeff was able to give a couple of moments and an opportunity before the preseason and pre-race drivers meeting. And I got to tell you, his excitement for this venture and this series and even this race, it's infectious. It was hard to not be around him in any capacity and not feel the aura, if you will, that was just coming off of him for being here in this moment and being a part of this. And the other thing I want to touch on, we got to hear from some of the members of Puryear Tank Lines, and they have set up an incredible activation point just behind the main building. So for those of you who are fortunate enough to be here at Southern National, they are welcoming anyone who has or is thinking about getting a CDL license. They've got tons of giveaways and prizes. It is partners like that that make the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour oh so special.
It really is, and how it's been a family and how those relationships have continued over the years. It's something that makes it very special, and you know, that's what short track racing is. It is all about family, so to have these relationships be formed is very special. But I also kind of wanted to touch on, you know, something else that Jeff Burton talked about in the drivers meeting, and I think he kind of said it humorously, but they don't want to screw up what Jack and Keeley have built here with the Cars Tour. And as much as there is so much enthusiasm around this new ownership group coming into the Cars Tour, you know, they'll be the first ones to tell you that they're not going to reinvent the wheel with this. They want to take what has made the Cars Tour special, what has made it work, and they want to build on that. They don't want to come in and change everything as if everything's going to go away, because at the end of the day, these drivers strap in and they get to compete against the best late model drivers in the country, and that is not going to change.
One of the biggest things that we've been hearing from all members that are involved and all stakeholders is that, yes, even though this is a pathway to greater things, the idea is for this series and the identity of all the drivers involved, pro and late model stock, they are the warriors. They are the one who achieved at their local short tracks and have converged here to test their talents amongst one another. And that is an amount of passion and support that's been stretched across all racers, including the likes of Connor Hall, Brandon Pierce, and those who have been at this for several years, all trying to do their best to make sure that they are, in fact, not only the best on the grassroots level, but the best in this staple of late model stock car racing and pro late model racing, for that matter, with the Cars Tour.
It is so special. And, you know, another thing about talking to a number of these drivers about the Cars Tour, and I know Dylan Wilson, he was one I was specifically catching up with a couple of weeks ago, and this series is a mix between those drivers who are looking at this series as a way to prove themselves, to get experience and to race against some of the best drivers in the world. But there are a bunch of veterans here, Eric, that look at this as their Cup Series, that they don't want to go any higher, that they love this level of racing. This is what they enjoy the most. It's just so pure, and they want to be a part of it for the long term. There isn't a stepping stone here for them. The Cars Tour is their highest level of motorsports.
If you look at how the schedule breaks down, 19 races in total, 10 double headers like what we have here today with the late model stocks and pro late models, 6 standalones for the late model stock cars, 3 standalones for the pro late models. But all of that talk, all of that effort, all of that energy has now come to this moment where it is going to result in some on-track action. Let's go trackside to kick off the 2023 season with Jacqueline Drake.
Joining me alongside Trey Thacker for Superior Tank Lines is 2 employees that have over 44 years of service with the company. Give me the most famous words in motorsports.
On behalf of our per year, guys, let's do it. Drivers, start your engines.
Well, Blake, been a lot of weeks of preparation, a lot of preparedness from all involved, and that moment is finally here. And now to think, especially in front of a new audience live on Flow Racing, one of these drivers is going to have a chance to win the first race of a new era back at a track where it all began.
And in such a special time, again, this is the largest field that we've had in the Pro Late Model Series in its history, and this is how they are going to line up for this one for the first 100 laps of the Per Year Tank Lines 225.
We heard earlier Justin Kreider won the Male Pole Award earlier in spectacular fashion over Ashton Higgins, will make up row number 1. Katie Hedinger and Luke Morey take you back through row number 2. Mooresville, North Carolina, Gavin Boschel and Mike Hopkins, a well-known New England short track racer, comes south to see what he could do against the Cars Pro late models here. He'll be starting at 6th spot. Brett Suggs, Brian Kruzek take you through row number 4, while Carter Langley moves to the pro late model ranks for the late model stock cars. Legend car graduate George Phillips takes you outside of row number 5. Caden Quapple and Joshua Horniman take you through your first 12 starters.
And looking back to row number 7, you see Austin McDonald was finally able to reach victory lane last year. Let's see if he can repeat it again. Isabella Robusto, who is very busy today, will be running in both features starting in row number 7. Logan Boyette, Tristan McGee, and you see the rest of the field on your screen. 24 drivers listed here. All of them that showed up on the property will start in this race, and that's been a great thing to see, that just in 2 series you can see the pit area is packed with race cars.
And the field is being paraded by, of course, the Per Year Tank Lines truck that is just ahead of the Solid Rock Carriers pace truck there, with the field now eventually going to be in the hands of that of Justin Kreider. There was one car, another 7 car, would you have it. That would have been the 3rd one we had here on the property. Tyler Church out of Concord, North Carolina, intended on competing in today's 100-lapper. However, a mechanical problem forced that team to load up and go home early, so Church will not be able to make the call. But as Blake mentioned, 24 starters strong for the first Pro Late Model checkered flag. And we should remind viewers that this is only the 2nd year of Pro Late Model competition under the Cars Tour banner. As a matter of fact, the series stepped away from sanctioning a Super Late Model series for this Pro Late Model platform. And for it to come to this racetrack, it's a very unique venue for several different reasons. For more, let's go down trackside to Jacqueline Drake.
Yeah, guys, Southern National Motorsports Park is historically known to be a very abrasive surface. And one factor that drivers are going to have to watch out for today is the 17-degree banking in the corners. Now, this is going to substitute for high corner entry speed for these cars. They're going to have to be very mindful not to burn up that right front tire. Now, drivers, speaking to many of them, they're making those decisions early on how wise and thoughtful they're going to be about how to actually save these tires for the laps ahead. We got 100 laps up for the Pro Late Models. We'll see who can do it best.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And, you know, she pointed to the track and said to watch out and to look at the banking, and I thought she said we were going to watch out for that big truck that was driving right behind her as it was barreling by.
Well, this is not the way in which you want to start your season. 2 cars on pit road with the hood up already. The first one in your picture, the number 7, the white number 7 of Tristan McKee, the hot gun youngster who was very impressive at the South Carolina 400 last November. And the other one is that of Nick Loden out of Stanley, North Carolina. It looks as though they finished work on that number 43. He will be re-entering at the tail end of the pack, but McKee's team also trying to finish up whatever last-minute preparations. You mentioned earlier, Blake, practice was very condensed here today due to the washout yesterday. It's possible some of these teams are going to be finding out the hard way that things aren't exactly the way they're supposed to be in terms of being race ready.
Well, again, and this has been an off season for everybody, right? It's for the drivers, it's for the crews, that you go a couple months without being in race mode, and occasionally sometimes those technical gremlins and those things can just kind of sneak up on you. And like you mentioned, it doesn't help that both the races that we've been covering this year, that basically everything has been rained out up until race time. Of course, they did get practice this morning, but not near the allotted day that they typically have here in the Cars Tour the day before, to have several hours worth of preparation.
You see Katie Hedinger on your screen. She has had a spectacular start to a 2023 campaign already. Picked up a big Pro Late Model win down in New Smyrna during the World Series of Asphalt. A little bit of housekeeping as far as how the Pro Late Model landscape has changed from 2022 to 2023. Your reigning champion Luke Fenhouse, it was recently announced that he's going to run in the ARCA Menard Series East full-time in 2023. And your 6-time winner William Sawalich, well, he races currently, as he did last night in Phoenix, for Joe Gibbs Racing in 2023. The plan is he too will also run the full ARCA Menards East slate, and he will run as many ARCA national rates as his age will allow. That youngster not yet in the age bracket to compete on some of the bigger speedways. Had a strong run last night at Phoenix before being taken out while leading. The question is now, who will take the reins of this series with a fresh, clean slate in 2023?
Well, in any series that has kind of played that support level for the late model stocks, it has produced winners. I mean, you think of even back in the super late model days, Carson Kvapil won the championship in that series, eventually moved up to the late model stocks and won the championship last year. So it has been a great proving ground. And these cars, Eric, are so hard to drive around this racetrack, and they're even pulling times that are faster than what the late model stocks that we have, because you're just able to take these cars around the corners at such a high rate of speed.
See our chief starter, Brandon Willard, with the one-to-go signal in hand. This track, as Blake mentioned, 0.4 of a mile long. The banking is enough to allow these cars to keep their momentum up. The question is, who will be able to do it for 100 laps and claim the first checkered flag of the new regime of the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour? Pace truck pulls to pit road. Glad you're with us on Flow Racing as we're about to get underway. The 2023 season is green at Southern National. And from the pole, Justin Kreider is going to cement the lead at the end of lap number 1 ahead of a double-wide battle between Katie Hedinger and Ashton Higgins. As Hedinger works the bottom, that top groove not able to help Higgins. He nestles down into third. Here's a side-by-side battle just behind with Gavin Boschel inside the number 49 of Luke Morey for fourth.
Well, you can see Luke Morey stuck on the high side right here, and very early on, all of these drivers starting to kind of file in line to get down to the bottom of the racetrack early and forming a long line. And Morey right now, the outside car, trying to find a way to get down there off of turn 4. Let's see if he can clear, and no, almost contact made right there with the number 19 machine of Brian Kruzik, who will go on by, and finally Morey finds a spot in line just a couple spots back.
Morey almost looked like a car getting kicked out of the Talladega draft there, trying to find a hole in line to get down to the preferred avenue. The question is not only perhaps if, but perhaps when that outside lane may come in. You see one driver here. We mentioned William Sawalich. Well, he drove that Sexa Racing Development number 6. He gets very loose there. A little bit of contact with Kyle Campbell down to the bottom.
You see Phillips, you can see the wall and the smoke that he scraped off of turn number 2 and tried to get back down, and oh, more contact made as Phillips is trying to forge his way down to the bottom side, is not quite able to do it, and is crowding Kyle Campbell down there on the bottom side, trying to hold steady.
You can see just how slick that second groove is for Phillips. Every time he gets back to the power on corner exit, the car twitches just a little bit, and it does so once again there off too. Campbell, though, does not want to allow that number 6 of George Phillips down to the inside, and Isabella Robusto is going to try to fill the hole down low as well. The good thing for the rest of the field is the fact that Phillips is starting to lay down some rubber in that top groove, as things have pretty much neutralized in terms of the preferred lane.
They are racing so hard here. This battle side by side still has not relented. And this is a case where if you're Phillips hanging out here on the top side, you're kind of proving to the 0-3 that, hey, I have a car up here that may not be the preferred lane right now, but can still keep up and still make life hard. So I wish you would let me go, but yeah, this is racing here. These guys aren't going to let each other go.
See, check that. That is Campbell who's going to be able to move up and grab the spot. Phillips now going to concede the outside lane for the moment and fall in line behind Isabella Robusto as he is able to stop the bleeding a little bit further down the running order from where he started. Phillips came to the green flag in 10th spot, has lost a couple of positions here in the early going. He's back to 16th as they run, as we flash back up to the front of the pack.
Not much has changed up here with Kreider still holding steady, but Katie Hettinger cleared.
Oh, trouble, turn 4. Sorry, Blake, saw a field stack up there momentarily. One car goes around, and that is the number 44 of Justin Whitaker, who has gone for a slide to put us under the first caution of the season with only 11 laps complete. Justin Whitaker, the first yellow flag of the 2023 Pro Late Model season. The driver out of Burlington, North Carolina, the JFCO Racing entry. I looked up at the top of our vantage point here that heads towards turns 3 and 4, and it looks like things just started to accordion back together. And it appears as though that Whitaker was the one who ended up on the losing end of it. However, there does not appear to be too much damage to the front nor back of that number 44 Chevy.
Look at everything kind of stacked up, and I think you can see the recipient of that, or at least where the contact was made, is some significant damage right there. We'll see. Actually, we'll take a look at it right here. Getting into the corner, and you see Whitaker tries to get down. I'm not sure if he knew that Jeff Batten was down there. You can see the end result. Tears up the right front of that 48 car pretty well.
At that point in the straightaway, you could see Batten pretty much lunging there up to the left rear tire of the number 44 of Whitaker. Also, great job by the rest of the pack to be able to avoid and not make that a much bigger incident. For Batten, though, he sustained significant damage on the right front. You see the team and crew looking over the driver, who hails from Nashville, North Carolina, to see if they can get that bodywork clear of the right front tire enough to allow Batten to rejoin the competition. So unofficially, 11 laps in the books. The Pro Late Model 100 lapper here to kick off the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour slate 2023. As a matter of fact, due to the timing of the caution, we'll roll it back. Say 10 laps are in the books, 90 still to go. Is perhaps another opportunity to remind some fans, especially those of you who may be tuning in for the first time live on Flow Racing, that there is in fact a competition caution element to these races. The way in which it works: Pro Late Models, if they go 35 consecutive green flag laps, we will see the yellow. With the late model stocks, if we go 40 laps, that's when the competition caution will fly. However, we will not see a yellow of that nature in the last 25 laps of a race. We'll keep you abreast as to how the afternoon unfolds. First caution ended up being organic due to the contact between Whitaker and Batten, as it appears as though we're about one lap away from the restart. So Justin Kreider, the quick time setter in qualifying, has paraded the field so far. Katie Hettinger up alongside. After the outside lane has not been the preferred line at all. I'm not really seeing anybody throughout the 24-car pack able to make the topside work. What can Hettinger do as they get set to come into the KRC Power Steering restart zone for the first time this season, and we're back underway.
I know we talked about that outside lane has not quite been preferred, but Hettinger got a great run there off of turn number 2 and is trying to hold Kreider at bay, but Looks like that's not going to come to fruition here. Caution's off, and I believe that was a restart. That is the cause of this momentary pause.
It's going to be a lot of firsts on today's not only broadcast, but also in today's racing action. That's going to be the first time that a warning is issued to the front row starters for leaving a little bit early, just as you see on the races that may unfold on Saturdays and Sundays, some of the top 3 series of motorsports. We have a restart zone here. The drivers are warned at the drivers' meeting prior to hitting the racetrack that they have to have the control car be the first one to launch within that zone. Otherwise, they will re-rack the field. You get a warning. You do it a second time, it could be a problem. However, the front row will remain unchanged for this upcoming restart.
Well, it's always the case after it happens to you one time. How much do you really heed that warning? Because all of these drivers, they're doing everything they can. They're rolling up to these restarts and trying to get everything they can. But how much do those warnings hit home? Usually it's the second warning that's not so much of a warning that usually gets their attention.
Let's try it again. Second verse, not same as the first. That time Kreider launches his way to turn number 1. We're stacked up double wide throughout the pack of the first corner. Boschel slips on the outside of row 2, and we're side by side for the lead in 3. Kreider leads the first lap off the restart. Ashton Higgins trying to get it back up to where he started this race in second spot. Got a fender to the inside of Hettinger for the runner-up position in 3.
That's one of those cases that Hettinger, just trying to get down as quickly as possible, is unable to do it. It was the same song, different dance on the start of the race where Higgins was on the outside and went by, and now you can see he does the same to Hettinger, although Hettinger has her hands full right behind her with Hopkins, who has raced his way up into the top 4, and he was nearly able to pull alongside and make that a battle for third.
The ethics of some of these drivers trying to fight to the bottom has been quite entertaining. It's quite obvious that the outside lane is not where some of these competitors want it. You see Caden Quapple, the number 96, falling back in the running order. Austin McDonald just behind him in the 13. That's where he started, in the 13th spot. Losing a position there to Isabella Robusto, and Logan Boyett also in the white and blue number 29, taking that spot away from Quapple at the end of the backstretch. Down the back straightaway, Hopkins, the New England driver who has come south, is able to take third away from Katie Hettinger, and just behind Carter Langley. Langley, as we mentioned, in that black number 24 for Ashley Krim Racing. Ran a full slate in late model stock competition last season, has elected to move on over and commit to an annual obligation to run in the pros, and he is not settled in that 4th spot just yet. Nudges Hettinger up the bottom of the racetrack. More contact in 1.
And I tell you, there's a couple of drivers who have a lot of pace, and both Mike Hopkins and Carter Langley. Langley started back in the 9th position, has very quickly made his presence felt. Meanwhile, Katie Hettinger is just reeling right now, losing a trio of spots in these last 2 or 3 laps or so.
And again, Hettinger was kind of trapped up in that outside line. The car just behind her, the 49 of Luke Morey, knows exactly what that's like. Hettinger falls back into a position just outside the top 5. That was Gavin Boschel, who pulled up and made the pass in car number 5 out of Mooresville, North Carolina. We'll see if Boschel could reel in the top 5 cars that are ahead of him as the top 3 tighten things up on the main straightaway with 20 laps complete.
The fastest car on the racetrack right now is that brightly colored number 15 car, as he has run down your race leaders, driven through a portion of the pack. And Kreider right now still holding steady. There hasn't been anything significant that Higgins has done to run him down. You have to remember, I mean, this is a 100-lap race. You're thinking about managing your stuff, saving. Is Hopkins pushing too hard? That's something that still comes into mind here, especially with how these Pro Late models carry so much corner speed.
And Blake, you bring up a great point. We're not even halfway in this race yet, and we're seeing several cars getting a little bit tail happy. That's not a situation that typically gets better in Pro or Late model stock competition. Once you burn the good off that right rear, you may end up paying the price throughout the rest of this race. It may be some of the more firmer handling cars like that of Caden Quapple in a Highland Motorsport number 96 who picks up a spot that may work their way up towards the front as we click off more laps in this race.
77 to go. I'm interested to see the approach here for Ashton Higgins. And again, knowing that after 35 laps that we've been on consecutive, that we will have a caution and how that affects how some of these drivers want to save. And talking to a lot of these guys, that's why they said qualifying was so important in these races, and whether you have the right strategy, whether you have the track position to be able to save a couple of laps before the cautions, all of those things are determined for a large part off of qualifying. And then you have somebody else like Caden Honeycutt that said anybody can drive up through this field at Southern National. So I love kind of the contrasting opinions here between these drivers.
I think one of the other things that we could perhaps spotlight here is the fact that we have the pretty solid performances by some of the drivers who made quite the trek down here. One of which is that number 19 of Brian Kruzak. Kruzak out of New Hampshire for Bobby Weber Racing, all over the backside of Carter Langley for what is a battle for 4th position on the racetrack.
Kruzak, an experienced late model racer. His car owner, Bobby Weber Jr., owns and operates his home track of Star Speedway in New Hampshire. You can see he's putting it to good use right there, able to get by Carter Langley.
Now the door is open for Gavin Boschel to slide through on the bottom of the racetrack. We kind of joked a little bit earlier, especially here at the racetrack, in terms of what Boschel is willing to race. It's everything. In fact, I have got to witness the young man in his World Karting Association debut back in the day, and he is quite the young talent who has garnered more than 300 race victories and over 24 Tracker Series championships in what is still a very young career as the battle for second heats up with lap traffic in front of the leaders.
And Hopkins, you can see how well he's able to roll the center of the corner as he nearly gets into the back of Ashton Higgins there in turns 3 and 4. A little bit of patience being exercised here, but no doubt about it, that 15, you can see the drive off the corner. He's just able to get back to the throttle so much earlier than Ashton Higgins right now, and I think Higgins smartly doesn't put up much of a fight. So Mike Hopkins, a late entry, up to second.
Yeah, you're right, Blake. Hopkins wasn't even on the preliminary entry list that we were delivered here towards the latter portion of the week. And boy, is he making his presence known up to second. The good news for Higgins there, when that pass was being made, there wasn't a Congo line of cars behind him trying to get through as well. Higgins was able to stabilize in the 3rd spot, while Hopkins sets his sights on Kreider, who has led since the drop of the green flag.
Kreider now has some traffic right in front of him for the first time. He's going to have to navigate a lot of this. As you can see, Zach Fowler going a lap down in that number 5 car. And you're going to be forced, if these lap cars are going to go low, they're somewhat going to be forced up there to run that second lane. Hopkins, you can see, gets a really good run off the corner to try to chase down Justin Kreider.
And you saw what Zach Fowler did. That's exactly what the leaders want to do. He made it known quite early in the straightaway what lane he was going to take to allow the leaders to get by. That's a heads-up move by that young driver in E33 Motorsports number 5. Currently in the free pass position as they run. Hopkins turning up the heat. Rusty Skews in front of the leader. And the battle for the lead is on the center of the back straightaway.
Yeah, Rusty Skews right there, and Justin Whitaker as well involved in that early incident. But Hopkins not going to be too patient. Hopkins going to go side by side into turn number 1 with Skews all the way on the bottom. That's going to block his way to try to get to the race lead as they have to go around the lap traffic. But Hopkins, again, smart and being patient right there to not try to force the issue.
Hopkins is someone who has garnered several big short track wins under his belt in his long racing career. In fact, picked up a Motor Mountain Masters win up at Jennerstown Raceway a couple of years ago. Now he's traveled south here to Southern National, and he is hounding the quick qualifying setter as they go into turn number 1. Justin Whitaker, who brought out the first caution on the low side, and we're side by side for the lead here with the lap car holding the inside lane, and Hopkins has to pedal it.
And again, that's a situation right there where Hopkins could have tried to force the issue and go 3 wide, but you could see off of turn 2, backed out early. He's not willing to throw away this race with 60 laps to go. So again, Hopkins, as fast of a car as he has, I admire the patience that he's exuding right now.
As Hopkins tries to close back up a little bit here on the main straightaway. They have driven about a half a straightaway away from the third place runner in Higgins, while the battle for fourth, and check that, fifth, remains intense. Katie Hedinger outside of Rusty Skews in that 8 car, who has fallen a lap down. Boschel just ahead, left side of your picture, currently holding down the 5th spot, while Hopkins is up to the back bumper of Kreider yet again.
And no lap traffic within spitting distance here. And Hopkins looked low, perhaps a little bit of a bump, a little bit of a nudge there on the back straightaway. But Hopkins, though, just is able to exit the corner so much better right now than Justin Kreider.
And off of turn number 2, lead change. Mike Hopkins, for the first time today, able to wrestle the lead away from the quick time setter in Justin Kreider. Hopkins will lead at the stripe. Hopkins now holding that advantage off of turn number 2 and down the back straightaway. As he comes through 3 and 4, it appears as though that this race may see for the first time as Hopkins comes to the line. Another lap on the board. Believe it or not, Blake, we're 5 laps from halfway.
Boy, this race has flown by quickly.
See some of the battling that's going on here. There's the other 15 in the field. That is that of Brett Suggs as they come down the back straightaway, and the caution flag will fly. And this is virtue of the competition yellow after 35 green flag laps being completed up to this point, with Mike Hopkins scored out in front.
And again, this is a situation that the last 25 laps are what would be inside 25 to go. We won't have a competition yellow after that back.
With the field now at the hands of the Solid Rock Carriers pace truck, let's check in trackside with Jacqueline Drake.
Yeah, during that long green flag run, we saw the number 7 of Tristan McKee come in. We saw him also start off the race with just a check into a pit stop, and he's been dealing with power steering issues, so he has officially retired for the evening. As well as down here in the pits, we have the number 97 of Dylan Garner. They're just double checking that nose of the 97. There was a little bit of damage. They're making sure that it's not going to cause an overheating issue to that left front tire.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And I know you mentioned the number 97. We've been talking about Hopkins being a late add to the field. That number 97 was as well. And you make the last-minute plan to go to the racetrack, and you're not able to get up to halfway. That, of course, is not the way in which you want to start off the season, but it does look like perhaps maybe that car will get an opportunity to get back out. And Blake, for the first time here, we are going to see the pits. We'll be opening here under the Volt Battery caution flag, and I guess we'll see what anybody throughout the field elects to do here this time through.
Well, and of course, these drivers are welcome to come down and make adjustments, and if they so choose. Of course, they're not going to lose any laps with these laps not counting under the caution flag. We see the green flag is up from the pit lights, and right now not a whole lot of takers, although Carter Langley, car number 24, who had quickly moved his way up through the field, gained a couple of spots since the drop of the green flag. Looks like he's going to be the first taker, as well as Zach Fowler, who went a lap down under that last run.
Langley's going to come down to the attention of his crew. And Blake, one new element that is in play for 2023 in both Pro Late Model and Late Model Stock Series is a halfway bonus, a cash incentive to be the leader at the halfway point of your respective race. And it comes at a fitting time, don't you think? We're 5 laps away from that here in the Pro Late Model feature event here as part of the Per Year Tank Line 225. But when it comes to this style of racing, Late Model Stock Racing, iRacing stepped up in a big way, not just with this series, but as a whole.
Well, they released that new late model stock this past Tuesday, so if you so wanted, and I'm sure iRacing members out there have done so already, but if you wanted to drive a laser scan version of Carson Quapple's late model stock, you could do so today by getting that car and this track. Also one of the many venues that are featured in iRacing as well. So give you a little bit of a taste of what these drivers go through making laps around this 0.4 of a mile bull ring.
Turns out to be a pretty good testing tool for us to figure out how those cars get around a racetrack such as this, as we are less than a lap away from the green flag. So, after being a late addition to the field, Mike Hopkins, former super late model champion in the past ranks, out in front of the field here, ahead of the pole sitter Justin Kreider. We are 5 laps away from the iRacing halfway bonus for the Pro Late Model field. It is going to be Hopkins leading the field back into the KRC Power Steering restart zone. We're back underway, 55 to go. And a couple of New England natives now parade the Pro Late Model field. Hopkins to the lead. Brian Kruzek up in the second spot. Boschel trying to get inside for third, but the door, trouble in front straightaway. Got a car to the wall hard. That is the number 29 who has lost it in the middle of the front straightaway, Logan Boyett. Boyett's car may have gotten tagged out of line on the middle of the front straightaway right at the start-finish line. Went down towards turn number 1 and made impact probably about 100 feet before the end of the retaining wall at the inside of the front stretch here at Southern National Motorsports Park. And you can see that Boyett is moving around in the car and has dropped the window net to indicate he is in fact okay.
And he was so close to barely missing the end of that pit road wall. If he had just been able to go a little bit further, as we saw the smoke kind of come into purview here. Now, obviously, the safety team doing a good job of trying to make sure he's okay. We'll take a look here. You can kind of look at the top of your screen right there, and you called it right at the start-finish line, got a little bit of a tag, and there was just nothing he could do to try to save that car.
I believe the contact was made with Isabella Robusto in the Wilson Motorsports number 28. You see them hit the line right there. Robusto kind of comes off the wall a little bit just as Boyett goes up, and that was quite the flush hit. Little bit of a slide there by Boyett as he kind of drifted right up into the lane in which Robusto was holding at the time of contact. And I'll tell you what, Blake, that doesn't look like that hard of an impact. But
he doesn't agree.
You can see the frustration there from Logan Boyett. That was a hard flush hit to the wall, and his race is over.
Well, you can certainly decipher from the body language that he doesn't feel as though he was much at fault right there, as Robusto kind of traveled down the track a little bit. But you can see the emotions run high here, especially these drivers and these teams. They drive as much for their crews as they do themselves, and to have cars get torn up early in the year, that's a really tough situation, and we'll hear it straight from his mouth as Jacqueline Drake has caught up with Logan.
Logan, unfortunate end for you today. Walk me through what happened there on the track.
My view is that she and her spotter don't know what they're doing, and I was at her door and she just turned, hard left. The second she hit me, snatched the wheels out of my hand and just spun me straight out, and I was along for the ride. I don't know what the point in that is. It's lap 46. I'm at your left rear tire of your door. Somebody on the spotter stand needs to do their job, and she needs to do a better job in the car. That's ridiculous.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And you could understand the frustration. Just as we were leading into the broadcast, Blake, we talk about the anticipation to come to this season opening event and start off in a spectacular fashion. That's not what Logan Boyett and his team were thinking about in terms of spectacular. It was quite a spectacular ending, and I can understand the frustration from the driver who hails from Florida, also runs for that E33 Motorsports operation. And I'll tell you what, we mentioned he comes from Florida. We'll take one more look at this here. As a matter of fact, we'll have an opportunity perhaps to take another look at it, but he's had quite the racing resume down in Florida. 7 wins in a track championship at Five Flags Speedway in 2022. And you see no real damage there to Isabella Robusto's car, at least not on the left rear quarter panel or further back. Unfortunately, though, it appears as though the contact with Logan Boyett's car was so hard, he's going to need a double hook perhaps to get that car back to the pits. Blake, let's look at this one more time.
Trying to see where Robusto is in terms of where she exits off at turn 4. We get a really good look of it here. And, yeah, if anything, you see Robusto maybe got a little bit loose, is kind of wiggling that car down the front straightaway. It's just one of those things where I'm sure Boyett kind of expected her to be a little bit higher, get a really good look right there. She's, about a quarter of a lane or so off the wall, more than some of the cars in front of her, and I'm sure that's what Boyett is using to kind of judge that situation.
And that was going to be the comparison I was going to draw. Compared to Luke Morey, who is just in front of Isabella Robusto, she's not necessarily in the tire tracks of the 49, but I would say she's perhaps about a half a car length to the left to give herself a better vantage point going into turn number 1 as the sun starts to set on that side of the racetrack. So keep in mind, we're getting to that point in the day where visibility could be a little bit tough. I wouldn't be surprised if she was trying to position herself to see into turn number 1 a little bit better behind Luke Morey's car. The problem is Logan Boyett was there.
Yes, he was. And again, Boyett was planning on coming out for about 3 quarters or so of this Cars Tour Pro late model season. So hoping that, this car can get fixed soon and that they'll be out here in short order racing again. But that's one of those things. Robusto, obviously, she's going to be running the full-time schedule as well, but just unfortunate to see cars torn up this early in the year.
This is the first time that we have seen a yellow-red situation. However, not many cars in the pit area, but a yellow-red with the Cars Tour means that even though we are under the red flag, in order to clear Boyett's car off the racetrack, if you are, in fact, back in the pit area, you can work on your car. So that is something that they attempt to do here when the opportunity presents itself. However, at this time, the field is stopped on the back straightaway, 4 laps shy from halfway, and I think we're about to get a quick lesson, Blake, as to how bad these drivers want that halfway money. It's pretty much going to be a 4-lap shootout to that point. So what does that incentive mean to these competitors? If that restart that just took place was any indication, might be in for a little more fireworks before we hit lap 50.
Well, not only that, you have cold tires. We're going to be sitting here for a while, so these tires are going to be cold. I'm going to have to definitely try to warm them up before we get going green here. But you also got to remember, this is a long season, Eric. There's a long ways to go. Plenty of races for these drivers to prove themselves. So, yes, the halfway money, it's great. You want to be able to do it if you're up there in those top few spots. But I think you have to think long-term in terms of competing, and especially if you're trying to go after a championship in this series. Every race counts the exact same. So you're just not able to go out. But, again, if you're in first or second, you see a couple $100 in front of you, I'd probably want to take it.
One of the cars that we did, in fact, see in the pit lane was number 48 of Jeff Batten. Jacqueline Drake is trackside with more.
Yeah, guys, currently the field is under what they call in the Cars Tour as a red-yellow, which means we're red on the track, but in the pits you can still do work. So you'll see the team hard at work on that right front fender. Actually, it's his father right there with the big crowbar, looking to see how exactly they can make this work. Currently, one of the braces for the nose of this vehicle is hitting on that right front tire. So whenever he's going into the corners, it's rubbing and he's unable to operate it. So if they can make this work for the 48 of Jeff Batten, this veteran OG Cars Tour driver will be back rejoining the field.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And Batten, of course, was involved in the first caution of the day with the number 44 of Justin Whitaker, and they've pretty much been on the comeback trail ever since, trying to repair the front end and nose of that car to get it to a point where it can get back out and underway. The artistry that is taking place down in turn number 1, you see it there, the double hook. I have no idea how these people could do that, but this is quite the promo for Per Year Tank Lines, who have their people hard at work. You don't want to see this, what are we, just 46 laps into the 2023 season? You never want to see the double hook at all, but especially this early on. But this is quite the representation for Per Year Tank Lines, who we mentioned on the lead-in, Blake. You want to talk about sponsorship activation. They had the truck with the American flag parade in the field. They've got a crane behind us here in the tower adorning the stars and stripes of our nation's flag. They are truly one of the best supporters that you could ever ask for. We saw some of the members down there trackside, and if you see them about, or you want to learn more about their services, check them out online. And I would love to learn how to do that, but I have a hard enough time parallel parking, so I'll just leave it there. But that is not the way in which Florida native Logan Boyett wants to be heading back on home. His race will end just 46 laps in to the 100-lap portion of Cars Tour Pro Late Models here at Southern National Motorsports Park. It appears as though that officials are going to be able to motion a couple of competitors who may have wanted to get to the pit lane an opportunity to get there to take advantage of this red-yellow that took place. As Jacqueline mentioned, it's a unique chance to not allow some of this downtime to take away from perhaps allowing some competitors or teams who fell a little bit behind the 8 ball early in the going a chance to catch back up or at least get their car running to the point where even if you're not in full contention, you can still use the remaining 54 laps to learn something.
Yeah, and of course that's important. We're early on in this season. These drivers get all the time I'm sure they would have wanted in practice to try and fine-tune everything. But also, you're sitting here under this red flag. There's been so much anticipation. I don't envy any driver that has to go out there and just have to sit. You've built up all this energy. You're ready to get going. and all of a sudden you're sitting in the race car. It's probably a little bit getting a little hot in that race car as well, so you're just ready to get going.
Under the red flag here with 54 laps to go after a hard crash involving Logan Boyett. He's okay. We'll step aside and be back with more Pro Late Model Racing from Southern National Motorsports Park live on Flow Racing next.
And back with you here from Southern National Motorsports Park, where we have been slowed by our second Volt battery caution flag of the afternoon, as Logan Boyett was towed away on the double hook. Not a way you want to see that go after contact on the front straightaway with Isabella Robusto on lap 46. But for more, we head down to Jacqueline Drake.
Hey guys, I caught up with our leader, Mike Hopkins. His team checked in and they said he is calm, cool, and collected up front. He feels comfortable. He was more worried about getting the lead here, but now that he is leading the pack, he feels good about how much tire he has saved throughout.
Thanks, Jacqueline, and that's a fantastic point, and that's not what the competition wants to hear. If Mike Hopkins is comfortable and he feels like he's been saving as he's worked his way to the race lead, I don't know if I'm one of the other cars in the field that I necessarily want to hear that. We're trying to spot some of the drivers who may have been taking it a little bit easier, and as we're a lap away from the green flag, the conversation of tire saving often comes up in some of these races at these southern tracks. I'll liken it to that of a poker tournament. You don't want to show your hand all that much that early, but you certainly don't want to go all in too early. The question is, when is the right time to get aggressive? I think we're about to find out. 4 laps shy from halfway, coming to the restart, Blake.
You see the pace truck pulls off, and Hopkins, will see if all that talk about saving his tires is worth it. You can see on the outside, though, a great restart on the top side here by Brian Kruzek, as he may be able to slot himself down into second if he wants it, or he can hang around on the top side and try to get back to the race lead. Not able to do it, but slides just in front of Justin Kreider there for third, and Hopkins looks to be clear. We talked about that halfway money for leading the lap beat. I would say he looks pretty good to get that right now.
Further back throughout the rest of the top 10, you see the number 9 of Ashton Higgins, outside pole sitter, holding down the last spot in the top 5, just behind the white number 96, Cade Quapple, trying to squeeze down to the bottom. Two-time winner from 2022, working his way further forward. Katie Hedinger in your frame as well. First side-by-side battle is Austin McDonald and Luke Morey. As we inch closer to the halfway point, McDonald gets a big run there to the bottom of Brett Suggs.
Oh, Brett Suggs got very loose here, and a very interesting story in Brett Suggs. I was talking to him a little bit earlier on today, and he runs Brett Suggs Marketing, where he is a videographer and does a lot of social content and promotion, graphics, all of those things for race car drivers, and kind of used that way to hang around the sport, to be able to be around and communicate and network with all of these different teams. And he's turned that into a driving opportunity for this organization in TH Motorsports. So a very cool story of somebody who wasn't able to get into the race car quite as soon as he had hoped, but stuck around the racetrack, and there's no better way to get involved in racing than to be at the racetrack. And a cool story there for Brett Suggs. Unfortunately for him, losing a couple spots here these last few laps.
While Suggs continues to struggle in the outside lane, put it in the books for that of Mike Hopkins. He has, in fact, solidified the halfway money courtesy of iRacing. All the while, the race throughout the top 10 continues through 3 and 4, with Ashton Higgins trying to fend off Caden Quapple and Katie Hedinger, who are in lockstep formation going into 1. Hedinger almost underneath the rear bumper cover of Caden Quapple's car as they exit turn 2.
But I think you see the contrast right here. Here's this meeting point between maybe pushing too hard and saving. Ashton Higgins was running up front, running in second, was right with the race leaders. Meanwhile, Caden Quapple, he fell back at the start of this race and is starting to slowly but surely work his way forward. So I think this is where you see kind of that contrast between going a little bit early and not having something at the end, versus if you're Caden Quapple, I think you're kind of on the march or surge forward.
This time off at turn number 2, though, Quapple has a little bit of tire slip. He tries to shut the door on Hedinger, who cut him a break at the end of the backstretch. That could have been disaster for Quapple, and Hedinger is going to lose about a car length in the process and fall back into the clutches of Canada's own Austin McDonald. back up here to the battle for second spot. It's another one of the Northeastern competitors, and that number 19 of Brian Kruzek, trying to fend off the challenge from Justin Kreider and Gavin Boschel, who is slowly starting to work his way further forward and turn up the heat in that 5 car as he rounds out the front 4 in this 3-car battle for second, third, and fourth respectively.
I just love to see, you can see Boschel right there just off of turn number 4, sliding just a little bit as they try to decide when to get back in the gas. And most of these drivers kind of talk about, approaching this racetrack, 70 or 80% is usually what you're getting out of this car at this juncture of the race. You don't want to push too hard, but you obviously don't want to give up too many positions right here. But we'll see this side-by-side battle once again, and Hettinger not going to cut the brake. You usually get one if you're Caden Quapple, and Hettinger right there, I believe somebody on the spotter stand told her, don't let him do that to you again.
Unfortunately, she didn't get Quapple up high enough out of the groove to make the pass. She's going to have to try to settle back in and try it again. Austin McDonald watching all of it out of his windshield, while Luke Morey enters the frame in the number 49 as well. Quapple holds the spot here as we are under 40 laps to go in the first Pro Late Model race of 2023. It is all Mike Hopkins out in front, while Quapple continues to hold down this spot just outside the top 5.
Well, if it caught my eye, I think I saw a little bit of smoke. I think it was out of the 13 of Austin McDonald getting into turn. Yeah, you can see it right there. Tire rub there for Austin McDonald in the 13. You can see both this battle on the right-hand side of your screen, and you can see that there's not a whole lot of race cars around Hopkins right now. He is pulling away. It's probably about 12 or 13 car lengths or so back to second.
We heard the report from Jack LeDrake trackside that Hopkins was happy, felt like he saved based on a lead that he has built up already. I'd say that report was spot on because it looks as though he's driving off into the Saturday night sunset here in Kenley. But this race will not go away. Look at everybody starting to burp the back tires on corner exit. Hettinger with a slide. McDonald with a slide. But these two, Caden Quapple and Katie Hettinger, just cannot separate one another as they draw back closer to Ashton Higgins.
Well, and again, we thought that Higgins was falling back a little bit, but Higgins has done a great job hanging onto that race car, and despite the fact falling back to 5th, has done a stellar job of keeping the battle at bay behind them. And Quapple, Hettinger, McDonald matching each other very closely in terms of times, but man, that smoke from Austin McDonald, it just keeps getting worse. I don't like the look of that.
Fight for second starting to intensify here as we have Kreider and Boschel who've closed up on Kruzak. We kind of spotlighted this race a little bit earlier, a handful of laps ago. Now the question is, what direction in terms of handling are these 3 cars going to go? They've fallen a ways off of Mike Hopkins in a tune of about half a straightaway as Hopkins works his way around a lap car. But this race for third, about 3 cars deep, with Boschel ringing up the rear for now, starting to apply some pressure to the backside of your pole sitter Kreider as they enter turn 3.
Boschel, one of the smoothest looking race cars in terms of getting off the corner. Very rarely, if at all, have seen a slide out the window here in the booth of Boschel putting that right rear tire at any sort of risk, and has just been really, really calm and steady. You can see it right there. It's able to get right down to the bottom of that white line, doing a solid job. Not quite exiting as high, though. It's probably half a car width or so lower than some of the drivers in front of him. And again, I think you made a great point earlier about the sunlight off of turn 1, and once you get onto the front straightaway, the sun is blinding you, and unfortunately for the drivers, there's not really anything to block that, and that's going to continue to get worse throughout the day.
It's also turned the broadcast tower into an easy bake oven while the fight for second intensifies in 3. Kreider has gotten to the inside of Kruzek as they come off of turn number 4. Boschel's going to try and follow. Kruzek may start to get a little bit busier with the hands, and Boschel gives a shot there to Kreider momentarily in the middle of the corner, and Kreider's only able to creep forward by about a half a car length.
I think a couple of people down in the pits here, as say easy bake oven up here, they wouldn't mind that right now with some of the wind. I mean, mid 50 degrees or so, but yes, that battle not over yet as Kruzek loses 2 spots right there. Boschel able to go right by and has Justin Kreider in his sights as well. And finally, we see this battle once again side by side. A little bit of contact between these two earlier, almost off of turn number 4 as well, as Hettinger and Quapple have gone at it, and Katie Hettinger finally gets the best of that bout.
Edinger was able to make that move. However, Quaffle was able to slot back in line before McDonald was able to fill the void on the bottom side as they come off of turn number 4. Higgins has been able to open up the advantage. That may have been what added a little bit of fuel to the fire to Hedinger's desire to get up to and pass Quaffle, because she was able to see Higgins driving away with that top 5 spot. Here's the battle for second. Well, I'll tell you, Boschel looked like he was swatting flies there on the main straightaway coming off turn 4. We are 3/4 of the way through this race. This is where how you handled the first 75 laps is either going to pay dividends or a big penalty for those who are a little bit too rough, as Boschel is starting to slide around, as are many others.
I don't think that a lot of drivers who are down there in the pit area, many of them experience here at this racetrack, they know what to expect, but are still watching intently this race to see how this track develops, what these cars and these drivers are going through. And I think they're making notes as well, which of course they have 25 more laps to try and figure out exactly what they want to do.
Well, this race for second continues on. The leader, Mike Hopkins, has put several lap cars between this battle you see and the lead of about a full straightaway that Hopkins is able to boast out in front of the pack, coming to 20 to go next time by. It is still Kreider who set the quick time earlier on today in Pro Late Model qualifying. There is Hopkins, your leader at the line, while the battle for second comes behind this gaggle of lap cars. Rusty Skews commits to the bottom to allow Kreider to go wide in turn 2. But there is a lot of work to be done if you're going to try to catch Hopkins for what could be the first Pro Late Model win of the season.
I just don't think at this point, 19 laps to go, he would have to run into an issue, which he almost did a couple of laps ago, was getting by Logan Jones on the back straightaway. He thought Jones was going high, Jones went low, and he had to check up, so he lost a little bit of time right there, but it's looking like something to that nature is going to happen for Hopkins to fall back into the clutches of these drivers back here with Kreider and Buechele back here in second and third.
You saw that battle for second go by the Stillwell Racing, number 43 of Joshua Horniman, who's done a great job. We had a car get up and out of the groove, and caution will fly after a spin by that looks to be the number 8 of Rusty Skews, who heads down the front straightaway. And it was a semi-slide that will slow the field with 17 laps to go.
Well, there was one other thing that could bring them right back to Hopkins, and that's exactly what we just saw right there, volt battery caution. And these two were battling further back. I believe it was Justin Whitaker. I saw a blue car in turns 3 and 4, and Skews did an incredible job to save that race car, did about a half spin or so as he was kind of gathering it back down on the apron, and you can see right there some of the remnants.
Yeah, a little bit of debris that's left there up on the 17-degree banking that Jacqueline highlighted for us earlier that makes this racetrack so special and unique. And that piece has kind of beached itself up about 2 lanes up in the first corner. And they'll be sending someone out there to hopefully retrieve that before we get back underway, as I think Hopkins was pretty much on a mission to the finish. This is going to disrupt it a little bit. And Blake, I think it's also going to bring back into the mix some of those drivers who were conserving their Hoosier tires to the point where they could hit the go button now. It'll be an 18-lap sprint to the finish. If you were mired back in traffic, Hopkins had all those lap cars between them. That's all gone. Now it's going to be a frantic fight to the end of this race.
And I'm just looking forward to seeing these drivers. Where we're up here at the broadcast booth off of turn 4, we've already seen a lot of sliding today, but 18 laps to go. We're getting these tires cooled back down once again. This is what I'm going to love seeing. These drivers, many of whom are young and using this time in the Pro Late Model Series to gain a lot of experience, how they handle a late race situation like this, double file restarts, who's going to be able to get down to the bottom, who's going to have that preferred lane. I'm loving this. This is going to be a great finish to this one.
And while we have a moment here, we want to recognize the fact that this venue, Southern National Motorsports Park, it is getting ready for what it's going to be its busiest season of quite some time. As a matter of fact, they only ran select races over the last few years. Michael Diaz and Jerry Brown took over ownership of this facility in 2012. They have done a fantastic job getting this space ready. We know that they just ran the Thanksgiving Classic just a handful of months ago, and we'll see Michael Diaz's son Mason out on the racetrack here in just a few moments. But believe it or not, he doesn't race here all all that often. He's normally handling duties like what his dad Michael is doing today, running around, making sure that people are comfortable, happy, picking up trash if need be. They have a whole game plan laid out. But for those of the fans who have come out here today, or if you're watching along on Flow Racing and you want to check out a really unique and racy facility, Southern National Motorsports Park deserves to be up towards the top of your list for sure, because this place is certainly something special.
Well, it is, and you tell that the fans feel that as well. You look all the way around this racetrack. I mean, just look at that shot right there. Fans all the way around, turns 3 and 4 lined up. We mentioned a lot of the parking where, throughout the week they were saying, oh, we have 2 spots left. We have 1 spot left. We're sold out. And even the fans that have come up here into the grandstands, they packed this facility. I look out of this window here in the booth, and all I see are cars parked out here. It has been a great debut race here for the Cars Tour, and it's great to see that has translated. One of the things about this added attention on short track racing, with this ownership group coming into the Cars Tour, it can have a trickle-down effect, and I think you're starting to see that, especially after North Wilkesboro last year. I mean, look at Hickory Motor Speedway. Biggest opening crowd they've had in at least 20 years was there last weekend, and I think that trickle-down effect will hopefully spread beyond the Cars Tour.
Short track racing is alive and well. Let's check in trackside with Jacqueline Drake.
Guys, we saw the 77 come in really quickly for a quick track bar adjustment. Logan Jones, he was sent right back out. He'll join the back of this field.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Looks as though we are going to be seeing the 1-to-go signal this time by from our chief starter, Brandon Willard. Been a staple with the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour. Has that of Brandon Willard, his father Danny up here in race control with us as well, serving as race director. It is a hardcore family group that is put together in terms of officials and everyone who makes this series tick. We're excited to see how the remaining 18 laps of this event are going to unfold. Mike Hopkins, since taking the lead from Justin Kreider just shy of the midway point, is trying to hold on for 18 more laps. Into the KRC Power Steering Restart Zone they come. 18 laps to settle it from Southern National.
And Hopkins elected to go a little bit late in the restart zone. I don't think any strategy has been bad for him today. He's able to get out by a car length or so. Boschel right now, battle for second. Kreider slides back on the top side of Boschel. Clear for second. Here comes Katie Hettinger for third.
And they've got Kreider kicked up to the top lane, and they're going to start to try to line up underneath that 7 car off of turn number 2. Kreider back into 4th position, slams the door shut on Kruzek before he can get up and alongside. And Kreider now brings the fight back to Hettinger off 4, but can't draw even with that 81 Chevy to turn 1.
It's amazing how quickly this field got single file. You can see all the way back through, and even still just after 2 or 3 laps, look at the lead that Hopkins has been able to build up. Oh, and contact here as Kreider trying to get back down to the bottom. And Kruzek and Kreider tangle.
And now McDonald tries to get down low as Kruzek overshot the corner, and we got trouble in turn number 4. 1 car around. Suggs narrowly misses the end of the pit wall, and there's heavy damage to George Phillips' car. Logan Jones was the other car that you saw stationary there momentarily, but it is George Phillips, the new driver, who is in the same ride, the Setzer Racing and Development number 6 car that William Sawalich wheeled to much success last season. And this is not the start of the season that Phillips and team were hoping for. Well, let's take a look at what happened here. Keep your eyes on the left-hand side of your screen, way up ahead of Suggs in the 15 car. Phillips just lost it. It appears as though he was on the back bumper of Ashton Higgins and lost the back end of the car. Suggs slides his way through to avoid, and the right rear of Suggs' car comes over the nose of Phillips as he spins up the banking.
Golly, look at Brett Suggs. I mean, that is incredible driving. I know he even got part of that, but the fact that he kicked that sideways and that wasn't worse, that is incredible there from Brett Suggs.
Unbelievable job there by Suggs. Then to miss the pit wall, no less.
Yeah.
There's a lot of damage to the bodywork of George Phillips' Chevy. And it appears as though the team has done a quick survey of the damage to see if they can get it pieced back together to allow Phillips the opportunity to get back out there. This young driver, if you've watched any of the summer shootout racing in the past at the Charlotte Motor Speedway or even Legend Car Racing at Atlanta Motor Speedway, you've seen George Phillips in victory lane before. For more on what's going on with that race team, let's hear from Jacqueline, who's trackside.
Yeah, you see the number 6 of George Phillips, who's going to rejoin the field onto the track here. Speaking to him earlier, this is only his second pro late model start. You mentioned it, him racing at Hickory just last week, and so still a little bit of a learning curve for this young driver. They used a roll of tape to fix that nose, and then, of course, he'll rejoin the back of this field.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And the good news for George Phillips and company is that that car is not too badly damaged and he can't run out the remaining 15 laps because, as we mentioned, first race of the year, every lap counts, especially for someone like Phillips, who, as Jacqueline mentioned, is only his second ever pro late model start. The first one, though, it was pretty solid. In fact, finished third at Hickory Motor Speedway in that pro late model event that Jacqueline was alluding to. And he'll have a chance to see out the remaining 15 laps.
Well, I mean, and that's going to be part of the learning process here for George Phillips. But if there's anybody, if there's any team that can help him develop, definitely Brandon and Dennis Setzer, with Setzer Racing and Development. That's definitely a combination that can make it work.
How about the man himself, Jack McNelly, who built up the Cars Tour to the point in which it was so attractive and appealing for the new ownership group. And we mentioned, still involved in the day-to-day operations, still heads up the drivers' meeting each and every week. He's still that permanent fixture, face, and, of course, personality that will remain in Cars Tour pit areas for many, many years to come. He's not going anywhere, and he is still heavily involved in all the day-to-day operation. And boy, does he have a firm handshake, I'll tell you that. It was great to see Jack for the first time this year, and he is watching over everything that has taken place there right at the entrance of the pit lane.
Well, you can see even in our shot, that's where he loves to stand. He loves to stand in the restart zone for a couple of reasons. One, it's pretty obvious. If there's a jump with the restart, he's right there to settle it. And two, he loves being down in the pits. Any situation that comes up with officials or any teams that need to communicate, he is right there, and he's going to take care of the job. So you'll see him right there pretty much every single week, right there in the restart zone, regardless of the track that we go to.
And he is going to be watching this upcoming restart closely. You have the veteran in Mike Hopkins, who, as we mentioned, took the lead about 4 laps before we got to the iRacing halfway point. But now there's a newcomer, a young gun, in the DLP Motorsports number 5 of Gavin Boschel. This driver has won in just about everything he's ever climbed into. He did, in fact, finish in the top 10 in both of his pro late model starts last season, but he has 15 laps and some clear road ahead from what could be one of the biggest wins of his young career. Half a lap away from the restart, it'll be Hopkins and Boschel bringing us back down.
We'll see what Hopkins elects to do this time. He was late going in the restart zone last time. We'll see if he gets an early launch. And no, he goes late again. But again, the same result. Is able to get almost clear down into turns 1 and 2. And Boschel able to get down early right there to get in second.
Fortunate for Boschel, unfortunate for Hettinger, who just wasn't quite close enough to keep that 5 up in that second groove, which just quite frankly hasn't been there all race long. Single file amongst the front 4. Side-by-side battle between Kruzak and Austin McDonald, who's kicked up to the high side. And how about entering your picture there on the left-hand side of your screen? That number 43 car started this race with the hood up on the pit lane. That yellow machine heading right into your living room. Nick Loden charging to the front.
That is one of those great rebound efforts there for Nick Loden, who may have some of the best tires in the field. He's able to go by Austin McDonald. And you talk about races when you think about this long term, these drivers that are trying to enter all of these races and compete for a championship, Nick Loden being one of them as an annual entry. These are the type of races that you can really check off and think back to if you do have that success at the end of the year. These are the races where that happens.
Further back, things got a little bit physical there between Kyle Campbell and company. Also sideways off of turn number 4. Trying to get back to the bottom is Ashton Higgins on Luke Morey in a fight up in the top 10. Higgins now drop kicked up top. Caden Quapple to take advantage as well. As they hit the line, 10 laps to go for Mike Hopkins, who has been able to withstand the challenge and all pressures on these restarts. He's built up a healthy lead while the fights continue throughout the pack. Phillips on the comeback trail, and there's your top 4 in your picture.
It's hard to say how impressive Hopkins has been as we get through this race. And how about a nod to Katie Hettinger as well, who has kind of worked forward and back, been in a couple of different positions throughout the course of this race, finds herself in third right now, and even last couple laps would indicate that she may have a chance at catching Bochelle there for second if she can get a handful of laps.
Trouble, turn 4. Got a car around in the fourth corner, and it will slow the field by the volt battery caution. And for the second time today, it is in fact George Phillips, who has gone around the same portion of the racetrack that queued up his first involvement of a volt battery caution just a handful of laps ago. And we will see a yellow flag here with less than 10 laps remaining. Phillips was one of the drivers who, of course, we saw involved in that incident after Suggs did an amazing job avoiding the driver's side door, or at least, the very least, the left front wheel of that number 6 car for Setzer Racing and Development. They got the bodywork patched up, sent him back out, but that car may have stepped out on him, may have been some contact, hard to tell from what we were able to see out of our vantage point. But nevertheless, the field is slowed, and Mike Hopkins is going to have to endure yet another restart.
I don't think it's been any sweat to him. I mean, Jacqueline was telling us earlier how cool, how calm he's been. He's had no reason to worry. He has a very fast car that is just able to get around this place so well, and everybody's slipping and sliding on these old tires. Not Hopkins. He has just been smooth sailing all afternoon long.
You heard Jacqueline mention just past the midway point that he was quite confident. He's got enough experience, I'm sure, to be able to trust his instincts in a moment such as that as he was relaying to his crew. Question is now, will he be able to fend it off? And I got to say, Blake, I'll give you credit there. We've been kind of reviewing some of the last restarts that have come through the KRC Power Steering restart zone, and you mentioned Hopkins appears to be taking full advantage as the control car in terms of when he wants to go.
Well, and I think the one thing you want to establish as a leader is you just want to be unpredictable, right? You don't want them to know that you're going late. You don't want them to know that you're going early. And that's one thing Hopkins has done well. He's been able to go late, and it hasn't really bothered him or hasn't faced a challenge where he can't get clear off of turn 2. So whether he wants to change that up or just stick with what's working for him, it's obviously his decision.
This will also be the second opportunity for Gavin Bochelle to be on the outside of the front row for this restart. So, similar question, what did or what could Gavin have learned the first time around that he could turn into some success here on this upcoming restart? Is he up to and aware of what Mike Hopkins may do? I'm sure they're coaching him as to what to be prepared for and ready for. But also, you have to be aware as to who's going to start on the inside, like that of Hettinger. She is certainly going to want to be right up to the backside of Hopkins' rear bumper to see if she can, at the very least, get up to second with only a handful of circuits remaining.
Yeah, that inside lane and trying to get down, although Bochelle and whoever was running in second that last restart, if you can kind of serve with the leader, it seems like through 1 and 2, you may have an opportunity to get down off of turn 2 and onto the back straightaway. But Katie Hettinger has had a really fast car, the second fastest one on the property the last 5 or 10 laps or so that we've gone green. So you can imagine she won't make it easy, and even don't tell her she doesn't have a good shot to win this race.
She could see the front. She certainly wants to get up to the front. She's got 9 laps to get the job done. Here comes Mike Hopkins leading us into the KRC Power Steering restart zone. We're back underway. Bochelle trying to bring the fight to Hopkins on the outside in turn 1. It is Hopkins clear to the lead. Bochelle slots into second spot. Hettinger side by side for third.
And a great restart by Bochelle right there. I know he didn't stay alongside, and contact made on the front straightaway as Kreider gets into the 19. They save it, though. Still green.
And a heads-up move there by Kruzek to not allow tempers to boil over when he got back to turn number 1 and spear the side of Kreider as the bumper tag continues throughout the pack. Robusto got knocked up the top groove there. Here's McDonald to the inside of Loden for a position just outside the top 5. They make contact off turn 2. McDonald trying to wrestle his way up towards the front of the pack.
This is the Cards Tour right here, racing all across this racetrack side by side. You can see Hettinger made up a little bit of ground to try and challenge for second. They are still trying to sort it out. There's trouble on the back straightaway. Nick Loden loses it on the back straightaway. You can see the smoke billowing off of his race car, and honestly looks a lot like the initial spin that we had with Logan Boyett, who spun on the front straightaway, obviously tagged the wall. It doesn't look like Loden tagged anything, but another case of getting to the middle of the back straightaway or so, and probably had a little bit of help to do it.
We saw Loden and McDonald battling side by side. There they are, top left of your picture. There's McDonald to the inside, a little bit of a slide there. And it looked like it was right rear fender of McDonald's car to the left rear of Loden. And it sent Loden for a long slide where he had to lock up all 4 tires to keep it off the inside retaining wall. Luke Morey does a spectacular job here to let off just enough to allow him to squeak by as Loden spins down to the inside.
Brett Suggs, Morey, we've seen a lot of great avoidances today, and that's a wreck that really started off of turn 2, where obviously Loden got a little bit of contact, gets him unsettled, and just wasn't able to catch it by the time they get off of turn 2. And luckily for Loden, though, car's not that beat up. It hit the inside wall there, so it's the only good news. The bad news is he's going to be put at the tail end of the field.
And he slid those Hoosier tires a long way in order to stop him from hitting that inside wall. Look at this place. I keep mentioning our chief starter, Brandon Willard. He used the hashtag earlier, Pack the Park, here at Southern National Motorsports Park. And I would say mission accomplished. And Blake, there's also several fans that are here that you can't necessarily see around the racetrack or in the grandstands. There's several suites here at Southern National, and they're packed to the gills as well. It's incredible to see this here for the Cars Tour season opener. We hope this continues not just along with us, but here at Southern National.
Absolutely. And walking up to the broadcast booth, you're exactly right. The suites were full. People are having a great time, and they're just so much anticipating the start of the Cars Tour season. It's been remarkable to see, and we hope that this continues. We mentioned we're going out to Florence Motor Speedway next, and we know they can put on some great crowds. We were there for the Icebreaker, the South Carolina 400 last year. Obviously had a spectacular crowd there, so we know Florence Motor Speedway, they can show up as well.
Sure, we'll see more of the same in terms of racing and fan enjoyment. Here we go. 6 laps to settle the Pro Late Model portion of the Per Year Tank Lines 225. Hopkins back on the button, and they race to turn number 1 side by side for the lead. Hettinger up to the inside for second.
It looks like Hopkins and Bushell maybe had a little bit of contact. Bushell going to try to get down, and he's going to get slid off the racetrack. He saves it, but is going to lose a couple of spots in the process.
Great job by the whole pack not to barrel down on Bushell, who still tries to muscle his way to the inside. Ashton Higgins into the left rear quarter panel. More cars getting knocked up to the top side of the racetrack as McDonald gets hit by Logan Jones. Some right front fender damage there on Ashton Higgins' cars. He's still got Bushell kicked up to the second groove with 4 to go.
They were 3 wide with McDonald a lap ago. No trouble, turn 1. Another car has spun around. You can see it right there on your screen. Rusty Skews comes to a complete stop to avoid that one as Justin Whitaker spins around. And at the top, very top end of the banking, you can see up at the top of the racetrack, tough luck there for Kyle Campbell, the 0-3. Who has a little bit of close ties to you this weekend. I know we brought it up a little bit earlier in qualifying, but I think it's a story worth mentioning.
Well, now that you mention it, I want to give kudos to my wife back at home. We're expecting our first child in just a couple of days. And in fact, it is Kyle's sister who will be helping us in terms of welcoming our little bundle of joy here. I know that cell service has been a little bit tough for everybody, but I've not gotten any type of telegram that my wife is in labor at this point. So we'll continue to carry on. But hats off to her. Hats off to Kyle Campbell and his family. But unfortunate result there for that family-owned team out of Canover, North Carolina. Really tight with the Quapple family. As a matter of fact, oftentimes, even when Kyle does not bring the race car out, he's often here helping either Carson or Caden. And it was interesting to catch up with him during media day. Absolutely incredibly delightful and polite young man. And he was running a pretty good race here until he got tangled up down there in turn number 1. But unfortunately, it doesn't appear that car sustained too much damage in that slide over there in the first and second corner.
Well, and if any of our viewers are out there and you're on Twitter, because I think you were telling your wife this a little bit earlier today, that with cell service and everything, perhaps maybe not being questionable here, that if anybody is tweeting at Flow Racing saying I'm going into labor,
that would be
direct them our way.
Well, a laboring day here for Ashton Higgins, the outside pole sitter, who had a pretty good run going here throughout most of the afternoon. And in fact, he's still running up in the top 10 as they stand. But that is a lot of damage that he has sustained and all the bumper tag that went on there after Boschel got kicked up out of the groove just a few laps into the last restart that took place. It looks as though Higgins, if I were him, to be honest, he's not, at this point at least, not by officials, being forced to come down the pit lane to fix that bodywork. We'll see if the black flag gets displayed, but at this time the pits remain closed. If it was his option, we'll see if he elects to take it once we do in fact see that the pits are open, but I don't believe he's going to be willing to relinquish that spot up there in the top 10, and he'll continue to try to fend off Austin McDonald, who's got his own donuts on the right side.
Yeah, McDonald's been struggling with a little bit of a tire rub. Last 30 or 40 laps or so, every time you can get into turn one is really where you can best see it because of some of the shade that's over there from our vantage point in the broadcast booth. So a couple of cars that are mangled and damaged, and, well, there's a couple up front that are not. That's Mike Hopkins, who drove his way through the field.
And it'll be interesting to hear, and hopefully this is not the first example of an announcer jinx in 2023, but it would be interesting to hear how late of a decision it was for Hopkins to come here, and if there was any reason behind that, perhaps. Now, that is a name that jumps out at you on an entry blank in a field of, even of a field of this caliber with 24, 25 cars that were entered for this race weekend. We know his ability, plus the decision to come down and take part in an event like Southern National Motorsports Park, and to see it pay off in such a big way. He's already got the halfway money. He's nailed just about every restart so far, but he still has 5 laps to go, and you cannot sleep at all on Katie Hettinger. She has had a spectacular pro late model career, despite the fact that it's a quite young one, but nevertheless, she has proven pace. She fell back a little bit earlier. At this point, it looks as though it was all strategy. Now she's got to get up to and around the most dominant car of the race so far in Mike Hopkins.
Well, and she's going to have to do it from the outside lane. She was on the inside of row 2 last time, and you can see here kind of getting a little bit of practice there, warming up the tires, trying to anticipate here with 5 laps to go.
Into the KRC Power Steering restart zone they come. 5 laps to go at Southern National for the Pro Late Models. Hettinger and Hopkins even at the line. Hopkins pulls ahead by half a car length. Hettinger trying to hang up top, but she's going to have pressure down low. Here comes Kruzek to the bottom.
And a little bit of contact there between Hettinger and Kruzek down into turn number 3. As Hettinger way up the racetrack to avoid it, Kruzek slides up, and Hettinger almost cleared down for second, but not quite yet.
Just behind him, how about Luke Morey trying to move up into the 4th spot? He's kept his nose clean all day as there was contact with Hettinger, who almost got into the wall. Morey now fills the void on the inside of Hettinger, while the quick type setter and Kreider tries to follow. Glove save and a beauty for Hettinger on the backstretch. Kreider now up and underneath Hettinger, while the leader Hopkins comes to the line. 2 laps to go. This the battle for 4th.
And side by side, Hettinger still reeling there on the high side. Almost a replay of what we had earlier in the race. There's one car at the racetrack. That's Boschel, who looked to have second. He is slow on the back straightaway, but the white flag is out.
Brandon Willard with the white flag in hand. Mike Hopkins 1 lap away from a Pro Late Model victory here on the Cars Late Model Tour. As they come through 3 and 4 out of Herman, Maine, Mike Hopkins comes to Southern National Motorsports Park and wins the Pro Late Model feature for the Puryear Tank Lines 225.
You can see the skid marks right there on the front straightaway. Nick Loden basically did a quick 360 there on that last lap. No caution as he got it back rolling, but that's where those skid marks are from.
Whole lot of contacts on that final lap. And we'll try to unpack it all for you, but Mike Hopkins led more than half of this race. After coming down south with his race team, as we mentioned, he is a former past national champion in the Super Late Models back in 2019. And some of these races that come with a lot of pressure, a lot of eyeballs, Hopkins and his team always seem to find a way to rise to the top. Hopkins there going to take an opportunity to enjoy this with his team, as he will be the first one to be able to climb out of the car as a Cars Tour winner in the Pro Late Model ranks in 2023. Hopkins getting set to climb out. Let's go down trackside and hear from our winner with Jacqueline Drake, who's standing by in Edelbrock, Victory Lane.
Mike Hopkins is going to receive that notary Hoosier Tire neckband all the winners here in the Cars Tour get that. And then, of course, they're going to put on that SRI Victory Lane hat, only given out to the winners. Who's going to exit the car? Put your hands together. Mike Hopkins. Going to receive congratulations from his entire team. Mike, congratulations on the win here today in the Pro Late Model division. Man, you dominated this evening. You really did. What was the secret sauce behind the wheel?
Just all these guys hard work at Port City Race Cars. Gary Crooks and everybody at their shop backs in Mooresville. Can't do it without them, but PFC brakes, Profab headers, high tower transmissions. This motor's from LCM back in New Hampshire. Thayer's Racing Engines. Everybody that makes this possible, everybody's just stuck beside me along the way, and can't thank them enough. I was sweating with all them cautions, but we had a good car.
Speaking of all those cautions, you had several restarts there that could have alluded to you burning up your tires too soon.
What a superstar, rock star! Mr. Crooks.
You were able to save your tires all the way there to the end. How were you able to do that with the pressure from behind?
I raced until like 3 years ago. I raced the Cars Tour Super Race here, and I embarrassed myself because I thought I was doing really well, but all I was killing the tires. So just went in the tire conservative mode, and this place races a lot like Pensacola. So once you've been to the Derby once, place that reminds me a lot of like that. So I just can't thank everybody, Jack, and everybody at Cars, Flow Racing. It's amazing.
Being a veteran paid off today in the Pro Late Model division. Your winner, Mr. Mike Hopkins.
Thanks, Jacqueline, and what a job for Hopkins and company. And I'll tell you, you talk about lessons learned, even for veteran race car drivers. He remembers the one that got away when he ran a Super here under the Cars Tour banner, and it appears as though he was able to take that experience and parlay it into much success here this afternoon under the new regime of the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour in the Pro Late Model ranks. Taking home the big checkered flag and trophy is that of Mike Hopkins. It was an incredible race all the way throughout as the celebration continues down there in Victory Lane. Hard to believe. We have so much more racing still to go, but it was Hopkins who took the lead. Margin of victory just over 2 seconds. Blake, he got the halfway money. He dominated, as Jacqueline mentioned. That's how you start a Pro Late Model season. I don't know how often we're going to see Mike, but nevertheless, it was quite the performance. However, there was another Northern driver who made quite the splash here today out of New Hampshire. That's Brian Kruzek, who was standing trackside with Jacqueline Drake as our runner-up.
Brian, congratulations on a podium finish for you and your team this evening. You had a little bit of contact with some of the other competitors in those final laps. Walk me through that.
Yeah, we just got bad loose there towards the end of the race. It was real good in the beginning, and it steadily got worse and worse and worse. And honestly, I just stick to the bottom and just try not to make contact with anybody. But unfortunately, we get pinched up a little bit and did our best to just bring it home.
Bring it home in second, Mr. Brian Kruzak.
A great late drive there for Brian Kruzak, as he was kind of one of those latecomers, one of the emergers that we had late in that race, who really made his mark there towards the end. But Eric, I think another one that we really have to bring up, and we didn't mention his name a lot in the last 50 or so laps, but yet Luke Morey finished in third late in the going, and he has caught up with Jacqueline Drake.
Luke Morey, congratulations, a podium finish for you here today at Southern National. I know you were a little bit nervous walking through it. Did you think you were going to end up in third this evening?
No. Earlier this week, we blew a motor on the dyno, so can't thank Bruce Cook enough. He told us to take our car to his shop and put a motor in it Thursday, the day we left. So just can't thank him. We wouldn't be here without him.
Wow, from blowing a motor to podium at the Cars Tour.
What an incredible story. And we talk about veteran experience in those top two spots. A lot of young guns in this field. And Luke Morey has certainly turned a lot of heads in his Pro Late Model season debut for that youngster. And I'll tell you what, he's been quite the follow throughout his racing career. And this may be just the beginning of what is a big push for him in these types of stock cars throughout 2023. An absolutely great run for Luke Morey to kick off his Pro Late Model campaign.
It certainly was. You think about some of the runs that we had there late in the run that just didn't quite come to fruition.
Well, with that, we're done with the Pro Late Models. The headliner, the Cars Late Model stock per year tank lines 125 coming up next here from Southern National Motorsports Park. Don't go anywhere.
And we return once again to Southern National Motorsports Park as we are set for the feature event here in the Per Year Tank Lines 225 as the late model stock cars are starting to make their way off of the backstretch pit lane and onto the front stretch to get ridded up and going. I'm Blake McCandless, joined alongside, of course, by Eric Brennan. We'll have Jacqueline Drake continuing to get stories as she has all day long, doing a terrific job down there in the pits. And man, what a great race that Pro Late Model Series was. Going through that race late in the going and having all of those restarts, I think it sets us up not only for a great show here, Eric, but think about the fact that we have 33 cars that are going to start in this feature. There are going to be cars all over this racetrack battling, and I think this is going to be one heck of a show.
You mentioned all cars starting. That's a decision that was made collectively by the new ownership group, Jack McNelly and their team. Because normally at a racetrack of this nature, 0.4 of a mile, even for the Thanksgiving Classic, they oftentimes cap it just below 30. So with that in mind, the fact that the decision was made, because, you know, if you're going to start them all, you got to pay them all. And that's something that they were able to take into consideration here. And that also kind of opens up the opportunity for us to kind of recap, I would say, the late model stock Touring 12. That's something we're going to be mentioning a lot here. That is 12 drivers that they go through a bit of a selection process based on things such as where they're located, what region of fans they may represent, how active they may be in terms of social and marketing, and so on and so forth. They have to commit to run the full year, but there's several other perks and initiatives that they have. So we'll be mentioning Touring 12 drivers throughout the race and throughout the season. And that's what we're talking about. This group of drivers, all of which who were at the media day on Thursday, they get a little bit extra in terms of a thank you for their support, but they also know they bear quite the responsibility to be one of the premier contenders in the late model stocks.
Well, and there's definitely a lot of benefits to that program. You think about half off of all race entry fees is obviously easing the burden on those drivers who come out and want to support and run in this Cars Tour each and every week. $150 in show money, 100 cents off per set of tires. Of course, you can get a case water or perhaps even beer at each event, a built-in provisional, and perhaps most of all, our good buddy Boo Carlisle is down there and is going to do a behind-the-scenes vlog feature of one of our Touring 12 each and every week.
Yeah, and that's tremendous work. Boo does a great job covering his own racing initiatives. Can't imagine what he's going to be able to put together for these Touring 12 drivers. And there was just so much energy, effort, and excitement that has gone into that. And, hey, if we were in a position where we did have to send cars home, those 12 would be locked into a field regardless of what happens to them on qualifying. That didn't come into play here today, but it's certainly a blanket of security for those 12 racers to know that they are, in fact, to them, their sponsors, partners, and teams, they are locked into every late model stock show this season. And they'll be there. And did I hear beer? Is that what I heard? That is quite the incentive.
Very good incentive. And, of course, even for Boo Carlisle, that is the Kickin' Asphalt blog that will be following along with one of our Touring 12. And this week, the featured candidate is Mason Diaz, racing at his hometown racetrack. So be sure to tune in for all that. It'll be at every single race, all 19 weekends, the Solid Rock Carrier Cars Tour this year. Will be featured in that. But, of course, they'll follow along in depth with each one every single week. So drivers continue to file onto the front straightaway here. About the back half of the field or so to go before we get things going here. You still see fans continuing to file their way in to this facility, Eric.
I have to say, looking at this site of all these beautiful full-body cars in the front straightaway, it reminds me of when I first went to my home track at Wall Stadium Speedway. There was something about the full-fendered cars. They called them street stocks back then. They evolved to a limited late model. I was able to relate to what I was watching on TV at home and compare them to what I was seeing at the racetrack in front of me. And as we mentioned, this may very well be a bit of a feeder series for some. Josh Berry is the proof in the pudding there. However, this is also a home for some of the baddest and most talented short-track racers in the country, many of which travel north, south, and as far west as possible to be able to compete in these races because they know they are the top tier and top echelon of short-track stock car racers. I'm sure we're going to see several names in today's field move on to better things someday, but there are staples. There are names who have been a part of this tour and will be for many, many years to come that make this tour so special. They've got a lot to prove despite the excellence they've already achieved.
Well, you can see Matthew Dillner right there running around and getting a bunch of content for Flow Racing and perhaps even a selfie right there. I think you can even hear us over the PA system. Yeah, tip of the cap there from Matthew Dillner. But one thing that has changed a lot about this series, Eric, we're talking about on the racetrack, is kind of, I want to call it a Cars Tour silly season, if you will. The amount of changes that have happened with many of the top contenders in this series. You think about Bobby McCarty, who after 3 championships with Nelson Motorsports is aligned with R&S Race Cars this year. Cale Gale obviously stepped into that number 22 and will fulfill that ride for this year. Mason Diaz makes the move over to Chad Bryant Racing. I remember even talking to him back at the Thanksgiving Classic. He was running around on a four-wheeler and doing all of those things rather than driving a race car. But even that night, and that was just after the South Carolina 400 where he had a really strong run, he was so optimistic about looking forward to this year and knowing that he has a chance to go out and win every single week.
And talking to Mason a little bit earlier about how he doesn't really race here all that often. Normally, he's got to wear the family duties to help out his father, Michael, and company to be able to make sure that everything is in place as this track is getting ready to run a full calendar slate in 2023. In fact, I'll credit auto racing journalist Matt Weaver for pointing out that there have been offers made on this property, and Diaz and company are going to try to keep this racetrack going as long as possible, and the only way to support it in such a fashion is to come on out to Southern National Motorsports Park, as many fans did today in droves. It would be great to see that continue on well on into the 2023 season and beyond.
Well, you see fans that are kind of making their way back after visiting the refreshment area and getting refreshed and everything with all that you could want, some food and some drink to be able to take in this last late model stock feature. But I think you hit the nail on the head right there. If you look around this property, that's what's going to keep these racetracks open, is fans sitting, lining the grandstands, and putting on a great show.
We talked about the strength of the field. There have been 6 Cars Tour late model stock champions in the Tour's existence since 2015. 4 of them are not only in the field today, but have at the very least, committed or stated they intend to run the full calendar slate. That is quite the plethora of muscle in terms of already accomplished late model stock car competitors in the Cars Tour. And to know that we're going to be seeing those drivers who we will highlight throughout today's racing event and all season long, to see them to be able to come on out, see what they could do in this new turn of the page and new regime. That's something that we're certainly going to be looking forward to, especially here as we're about to kick off this 125 lapper.
Getting close to it. And one thing, looking at the qualifying order here, that is one thing, how close they are. You can see that they are starting to get going now. No command here. We're just going to fire them up and get after it. That's exactly what I want, Eric. And what a great shot right there as you see these cars are ready to go. And you'll see how they line up here with our starting lineup for the Prairier Tank Lines 225. Here, the 125 lap late model stock portion of this race. Of course, have Carson Quapple, quick time of 15.428, sits on pole. He'll have Ryan Millington, the 2-time Hickory Motor Speedway track champion, to his outside. And one of the names that I was looking forward to seeing race here at this racetrack, as well as so many fans on the property today, that is Deke McCaskill, who will start in 3rd. Brendan Butterbean Queen, who has so much momentum coming into this week, in 4th. Chad McCumbee, can't write him out either. How about Ryan Wilson? Mason Diaz, who we've talked about at length. Minnie Tyrell, Bobby McCarty, and so many more names here. And there's 20 names we could pick off this who could maybe win this race.
One of the coolest stats that I found looking at this, row number 8, Tate Fogelman. His father, Jay Fogelman, longtime Pro Cup racer. He scored his very last Pro Cup win at this racetrack in 2008. Tate trying to carry on the family tradition as we turn the page through the rest of the contenders here. 30 cars listed on the starting grid. And Blake, as you mentioned, we had several more who were also on the docket as far as coming down for the green flag, including that of Brian Obsensky. I knew I was going to do that at least once today. We're just going to call him Obi. It's on the top of the door of the car.
It was a competition to see who was going to do it first.
And Jessica Can, who has been one of the most hospitable drivers we've been able to encounter here. She's incredibly great with the fans, us media members, and so much more. And she'll be fun to watch 30-second spot here today as well.
No, she certainly will. And you can see the last-minute preparations going on as we get everything going. And speaking of getting everything going, let's go down and see what's up with Jacqueline Drake in the pit lane.
You guys are talking a lot about people to watch out for, but one driver in particular, the number 16 of Chad McCumbee, Sam Yarbrough, who typically competes in the Cars Tour, is also crewing on that car today. They had a little bit of bad luck throughout throughout the 2022 season. They're hoping for better luck this year. He said, I found a new penny today in the shop, a 2022 new penny, and I stuffed it in my pocket. Sam said, if we don't have good luck today, that thing is going out the window on the way home. Watch out for the Chad McCumbee team in that 16.
And Chad McCumbee, hopefully he won't be out a penny at the end of the day.
I'll tell you, that's a powerhouse operation there. And Sam Yarborough, someone who was a fixture at the then Myrtle Beach Speedway, took those talents of Florence Motor Speedway, very similar setup there in terms of racetrack. In fact, that's the next stop on the tour for the Solid Rock Carrier Cars Tour late model stocks. That'll be at Florence Motor Speedway in just a couple weeks' time. But boy, I'll tell you, we've heard stories about Lucky Pennies working in several different other instances in motorsports. I think of Dale Earnhardt in the 1998 Daytona 500. Perhaps Chad McCumbee is going to be someone who can be able to parlay a good luck charm into a strong start in 2023, as he is one of the Touring 12 members, driving the number 16 for the Elliott McCumbee Racing Team.
I tell you what, I really like looking at the front of this field and thinking about somebody like Ryan Millington coming out here. Longtime competitor at Ace Speedway, where I'm the track announcer, so I get to see him race up there a time or two, and just so excited to see him up at the front of this field. We mentioned Deke McCaskill and all of his history here. When we did driver introductions, he was pretty much the largest ovation that was given out by these fans at this racetrack. This has been his sandbox for so long. Andrew Grady as well, somebody who's frequented this racetrack so many times over the course of his career, has won late model stock races at this racetrack, got a great reception as well. And obviously one of the great personalities that we have in this series is we have so many different ones, Andrew Grady, of course, being a very unique one.
Yeah, Grady was someone who self-described as being a little bit blunt, a little bit brash, and it was actually funny to hear during media day obligations, he used the term, hopefully everybody behaves this year. I'll let you all draw your conclusions there, but in all seriousness, Andrew is a fantastic sport. Generational racer. His father, Tony, got to grab the steering wheel at New River 1 week ago, but Blake, we are one lap away from the start of the late model stock season. I can't believe this day is here. So much has gone into this. Happy to be alongside of you. Happy to be here on Flow Racing. Let's do it.
Absolutely. We have waited for so long, for so many months since the announcement of everything that has changed here in the Cars Tour. The one thing that will not change in this series is you are going to see the best drivers, and you are going to see one heck of a show. As the pace truck dives to the safety of pit lane, the field is in the hands of Carson Quapple, your defending champion, and the per year take lines 225 is green. A little bit of a stack up further back in the field. Up front, much of the same. Quapple able to clear for first. Second goes to Millington, and a good battle for third right now, side by side, as Brendan Butterbean Queen tries to find his way to the bottom on Deke McCaskill.
McCaskill there, going to get up into the door, while Ryan Wilson got a little bit of a nudge from behind by the 16 of Chad McCumbee. He's going to be able to take over that spot just behind the 24 of Mason Diaz, looking to get around that red and white number 2 car. This, though, the battle for third between McCaskill and Brendan Queen and company, as it continues to be Quapple with the early advantage.
And look how low everybody's exiting, especially further on back of the pack, as we see kind of the tail end of that shot. Everybody protecting that inside line early on in this race as the opening couple of laps go on by. It is Bobby McCarty right there. New colors on that number 6 Solid Rock Carriers Ford this year as he moves over to R&S Race Cars, as we've mentioned. And McCarty trying to find a way down. Caton Honeycutt may not give it to him, though.
Ironically, the car that McCarty used to drive is just one car behind the bottom side. That's the Nelson number 22, with the Autos by Nelson number 22 of Cale Gale, trying to follow Honeycutt, Minnie Terrell, and more. But McCarty's making some ground on the top side. We did not see the outside lane work all that well in the Pro Late models. Keep in mind, those motors are a little bit more bogged down. Here, the drivers have a little bit more to work with in terms of making that top lane work. And McCarty is making some hay.
That he is, as you can see him pull alongside Ryan Wilson, and Wilson a little off of turn number 2, and McCarty able to slot right down. So gets that pass done on the high side. You see Minnie Tyrell perhaps looking to do the same behind him. Your top 2 cars on the left-hand side of your screen, though, still separated by about a car length, maybe a little less, as Ryan Millington has kept pace in these opening few laps with Carson Quapple.
You got to love the double box, being able to show Millington pressuring Quapple up towards the front of the pack, and all this heavy racing that is going on well up into the top 5. Brendan Butterbean Queen holds down that 5th spot in the 03. Minnie Tyrell working the top, and a battle for the lead in 3.
And without much of a fight put up, Ryan Millington, 10 laps, about give or take or so into this race, will take the race lead and clear Carson Quapple. So I think that's a situation right there, an example of Quapple exercising a little bit of patience early on in the going.
Just behind of car number 8 of Carson Quapple, you see the 08 of Deke McCaskill. That is someone who was not checked off as an annual entry perhaps this season, but he did state on the Stickered Up podcast earlier this week that he intends to run full time. If you look at his statistics as he makes his series leading 85th start today, he may be one of the favorites, not just for the race win, but for the title. McCarty has gotten to the bottom. Now it's Mason Diaz in the 24 hunting the top side here.
Only a handful of drivers have won here. Actually, only 2 that are in this field as they run right now. Deke McCaskill won at this racetrack in Cars Tour competition. The only other one that's in the field is Brandon Pierce in the number 2 car. So everybody looking to try to get back to victory lane here. We haven't raced here since 2020, so it's been a couple of years in Cars Tour competition. As you can see right there, McCaskill very quickly able to make his way by Carson Quapple for second.
And this is where we start to pose the question, what is the strategy of that 8-car and team? This team did win the Thanksgiving Classic here last November with Josh Berry, with tire conservation in mind. However, it is a bit of an art form as the fight continues throughout the midfield. The question is, how do you balance being able to save your stuff for the latter stages of this race while also keeping yourself in prime position to be able to pull the trigger and get back to the front and not be too far behind in order to make it pay dividends? That's probably the struggle that all these teams are facing, and I'm curious if that 8-car losing 2 spots in the early going is part of their particular strategy for the afternoon.
Well, if you think about what Josh Berry did here in the Thanksgiving Classic, it largely resembled this, giving up a couple of spots, really taking those tires easy, and then by the end of it, it wasn't even a race at that point. So you'd imagine with this team, the exact same team running out here, that may be the line of thinking for somebody like Carson Quapple. Further on back, Ryan Wilson stuck on the outside lane. You can see the 03 of Butterbean Queen able to make his way by. Pulling alongside with him, Caden Honeycutt, who may not be running full-time in the Cars Tour this season, but his presence has been felt for a number of years. Multiple-time winner last year in this series, and even made his Craftsman Truck Series first start of this season earlier at Las Vegas Motor Speedway.
The other white car running just behind, number 81 of Minnie Tyrell as he goes into turn number 1. What an interesting and great story the 2019 Cars Tour Rookie of the Year is. That driver has raised over $475,000 in terms of raising money for cancer research and support. He intends to have several guests at the races here throughout the year, and he is another one of your Touring 12 as he continues to try to work his way up closer to the front. He's looking inside of Brendan Butterbean Queen. However, Queen's going to be able to fall between Honeycutt and Tyrell in that 03 car and nestle into a position down at about the 8th spot.
And talking to Minnie Tyrell a little bit earlier today, that was such a big part. Is he's always wanting to give back. He's always looking for a way to not just make it about him, but to make it about others. And it's exciting to hear and talk with him about the plans he has for the future and how, he can be a shining light here in this sport of auto racing.
And he's got heavy pressure right now from a car who I think caught everyone's attention, that blue number 2. There are, no pun intended, 2 number 2 cars in the field. That red and white number 2 is that of Ryan Wilson out of Randall, North Carolina. That's a family-owned operation, but he was super fast in not only practice but qualifying. And even though he's gotten moved about a couple of lanes up into the top side for a handful of laps, now nursing the inside lane with the left sides on the white line, he's keeping himself perhaps exactly where he would like to be at this point, just behind Tyrell, with Connor Hall moving into the picture in the 77.
And Connor Hall is somebody that you cannot look over in this series. As we see further on back in the field, Obi, I guess, is probably the easiest way we could call him there in car 29. Definitely didn't have the qualifying effort that he so wanted. And back up here with Connor Hall and Ryan Wilson. Hall's going to take the trip down to the bottom side and clear on Wilson. And Chase Burrows wants a piece of it as well, as a late call there for Wilson, who I think had, or at least thought, he had a clear path down to the bottom side. Not so clear right there as Burrows looks like he's going to make his way on by.
You saw the 8 car of Chase Burrow kind of level out in the shot, showing that he got the left sides clear on the apron to avoid contact with Wilson, who now is getting shuffled on towards the back portion of the top 10. In fact, out of the top 10, Zach Miracle has gone by in the 32. There's the 14 of Jared Fryer and Cale Gale out of Mobile, Alabama. That name may sound familiar for many NASCAR fans. He won a NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series event back in 2012, beating Kyle Busch at Homestead Miami Speedway. This is the car that Bobby McCarty wheeled to several late model stock championships, and Cale Gale has stated publicly several times he really hopes to make the most of this opportunity, and he's working his way further forward.
And the fact that he doesn't have a ton of late model stock car experience, this is really the first time in a decade or so that he's run anything full time, but has very limited experience in these late model stock cars. But he's leaning on all of the different types of racing that he's done leading up to this point, and thinks that despite the fact in this car he may not have the most experience, he still thinks he can go out here and run with some of the best. As further on up the road, you can see Minnie Tyrell, who has been stuck on the high side. Chase Burrows is able to capture another spot as car 81 in Minnie Tyrell, trying to find a way back down to the bottom.
The car that initiated the Congo line was that of Connor Hall in the Chad Bryant Racing number 77. The stat that jumped, got 2 cars into the wall in turn number 1.
Obuzinski and Dickens up at the top side of 1 and 2. For the first time in the late model stock car portion of this season, the Volt battery caution waves for the first time.
Obuzinski appears to have shortened up the back end of his Chevrolet-bodied race car. The driver, who initially hailed from Long Island, New York, now calls Franklinton, North Carolina his home, and simply goes by the name Obi due to the uniqueness of his last name. But he is someone who is certainly a character. As a matter of fact, he was pretty much all smiles throughout the day here. And Blake, I know you had a chance to catch up with him, and even during driver introductions, we mentioned that there may not be many more opportunities for Obi to be on the stage in terms of late model stock car racing, because he might be making a bit of a change here.
The GM World Class Technician has spent 24 years in the sport, and has been out there saying on his podcast that this will be his retirement tour from late model stock car racing all throughout this year, and he is looking forward to coming back here with Thanksgiving Classic. It'll be his last race. He talked about he wants all of his family to come in here and have a great time, but unfortunately for Obuzinski, not starting out this Swan Song Tour for him the way he would have liked to have been. And I love something he was talking about a little bit earlier when he says, as far as tire conservation races go a little bit, he says, I want to be sick when I'm done driving. I don't want to ride around at 70 or 80% all the time. I want to go out there and run 100% all the time. As we saw one car down on the pit lane a little bit earlier, that is Dickens, who is getting service after being involved in that accident. Obuzinski is on pit road as well, and even Brandon Pierce has made his trip down to the pit lane as well, who was running all the way back in 31st before that caution flew.
We saw the feverish work being performed on the Mitchell Mott Performance number 20 of Joshua Dickens, the driver who has moved up from legend car ranks. He won a Dirt National event in 2022, but the opening foray in his 2023 late model stock car campaign with the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour has taken a little bit of a beating here early on with 95 laps still to go. Joshua Dickens, however, is one of the drivers who is slated to run the full late model stock season. So an opportunity at redemption perhaps could lie just a couple of weeks ahead at the Florence Motor Speedway. But it looks as though they have gotten that car bandaged back up, and they're going to send Josh back out to see if he can learn a little bit more here, despite the bodywork damage on the left side.
And already quickly early on in this race, 30 laps in. I mean, that just went by so quickly over the course of that run. As continue to look out over the grandstands here and continue to appreciate these fans that have shown up here to see some of the best late model stock car racing in the world. And see right there scrolling across on your screen, Ryan Millington, who has kept the race lead since he took it. Deke McCaskill now has an opportunity to try to take it from him. Want to see the balance of both of these drivers. One in Millington, who is so successful in his own right, but Deke McCaskill, who trounces this field in terms of experience, not only in the Cars Tour, but at this racetrack specifically.
Well, the number 15 has been good so far today. We saw Mike Hopkins grab the win in the Pro Late Model ranks, his number 15 car, and Ryan Millington, who also has a bit of a knack for winning some of these high-priority races. He won the Bobby Isaac Memorial back in 2021 and actually has a Cars Tour win under his belt. Blake, it came to the track that you're very familiar with back in 2020, Ace Speedway. It's also where he got his best finish last year, which was a 4th at Ace, and hopefully we'll be seeing Millington many more times. Only ran twice last year. Perhaps starting off the season the best way possible. We may be seeing a lot more of Ryan Millington here. Still a long way to go, but nevertheless, this initial off-the-jump and kickoff performance has been quite impressive.
Yeah, it certainly has, and Millington even made his way out to Hickory this past weekend. He was helping out Graham Haller and Austin McDaniel with their efforts and the weekly racing going on at Hickory Motor Speedway, which, by the way, they're racing tonight. You can watch that right here on Flow Racing, so don't even have to turn the dial.
The perfect plug by Blake McCandless. I love it. As you can see, the field in double wide formation. Looks as though we're about a lap and a half from getting back underway. So 95 laps to go here in the first race of the year for the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Late Model Stocks here for 125 laps total here at the Southern National Motorsports Park. And I have to say, Blake, it was nice to see that for the most part, that was pretty clean. But first, let's go trackside here from Jacqueline.
Toby, we just saw you on the track. It looks like you're retired for this evening. What happened?
Yeah, just in the seat. The car was really good. We started dead last, but man, we were coming there. And got to thank my crew, Power Base. We hate it with a finish like that, but he just pinched down on me. And when he did, he came across real late, and I jumped it back and ended up back into the wall. I'm okay. Family's okay. So we'll live to race another day. But thanks to all the fans.
95 laps to go in this one. Millington will lead us back to the green flag. McCaskill may have had it at the stripe as he gets a great launch there on the top side into 1 and 2, though. Give it to Ryan Millington off the corner. They are side by side for 3rd, for 5th, and for 7th behind him.
Heads up move there by McCaskill in that 08 car to be able to drop back in line. New colors on McCaskill's car. Actually debuted the paint scheme just a couple of days ago on his social media outlets. He gets back to the gas early on the exit of turn 2 and pulls right up to Millington for the race lead, while Quaffle and McCumbee continue to run door to door for 3rd. Mason Diaz just behind in the black and blue, number 24 and 5th.
And I don't think anybody can be surprised here that at his family's home track that you see Mason Diaz running this well as Chase Burrow there on the top side. You could say the same with Brendan Butter being queen as well. Chad McCumbee is making that outside lane work for him. And even Bobby McCarty picked up another spot on this restart running that 2nd lane.
And one element that has got to continue to pester these drivers on the main straightaway is the setting sun down in turn number 1. Vantage points to be able to perfect your entry to turn 1 has got to be getting a little bit more difficult. Even if you elected to run a tinted visor, as I don't think many expected this race to perhaps go off into the night, but it very well could. But either way, these drivers are going to have to be very careful deflecting off the outside retaining wall and setting up their approach to the first corner, because that sun is looking right at them.
I mean, you can see from that camera point right there, you can see the helmet, you can see the gloves working. That's how bad that vision is into turn number 1. As you see Brendan Queen, perhaps a little contact there with Zach Miracle, and they collect it up as Queen wanted the path down to the bottom, and Miracle may have gotten the worst end of it. You can see the damage on the right front of his car.
Queen's going to be able to protect the spot. Miracle with the glove save up there in 3 and 4. Now under fire from one of their former Cars Tour champions, Sherrod Fryer, to the inside. So, Butterbean Queen's able to protect the spot. It appears as though, despite the fact the Hoosier lettering's been rubbed off that left rear, he's able to hold on to his position for the moment in the running order, while Miracle has yet to find a void to fall into on the low side.
And we have seen that theme play out time and time again. As you see Burrow go on by, Cale Gale will not make the job any easier for Zach Miracle to try to get down. Landon Pimbleton is going to join the fray as well. Landon Pimbleton, somebody who is making his 4th career start here in the Cars Tour Late Model Stock Series. Obviously, he's a name that many late model stock fans are familiar with. He was the 2021 Valley Star Credit Union 300 winner in his first attempt, and well, that's something that follows you for life, Eric.
The next car working to the inside of Zach Miracle is the number 67 of Cameron Boland. They picked up a new sponsor in his hometown of Sharon, South Carolina. It's the Sharon Grill. And they promised, along with supporting his racing efforts, they'd be streaming every race live on Flow Racing all season long. That young gun, who recently moved up to a late model stock car, still learning this effort. They're getting quite the show back at the Sharon Grill here this afternoon.
That they are. Is looking further on back in this field, one car that was up there was Ryan Wilson that has fallen all the way back. But you could see back up front, 6 cars have separated themselves from the rest of the pack. You could see Millington there still maintaining the race lead with 83 laps to go. Deke McCaskill holding serve right now in second. But you can see the gap right there on your shot. Still a pretty decent gap between your top 6 and the rest of the field.
Field flashes by the speed shot at the end of the front straightaway. And Blake, this may be that time of the race where there are differing agendas amongst most of the field. One of the coolest stories I ever heard in terms of tire conservation came from NASCAR Hall of Famer Bobby Labonte when he jumped into asphalt modified racing on tracks like this. He says it's an imperfect science. You can never quite perfect the art that is measuring that delta to gain the most out of the tires you have to work with and knowing when exactly that right time is to go and to make it work. So you cycle your way back up towards the front. That difference in agendas is going to continue to show itself throughout the field as we still got heavy racing going on here inside the top 10 as Connor Hall was all over the back end of Chad McCumbee 16 off of 2.
Well, indeed we do, and I think I'm going to refer to one of our new owners here at the Cars Tour. The one phrase I've always heard out of them is, what's in every long run? A short run. Well, not exactly the case here in these late model stocks. 125 laps on these tires, so you certainly have to have it. But at a certain point, you can save all you want. You have to be able to go out and make that short run speed when it matters, because at the end of the race, you're going to throw these tires away, or at least you're not going to run them in one of these races anymore. So you can save all the tire you want. You can have it left at the end of 125 laps, but if you don't use it, you just lost a lot of time.
And one of the ways in which you may accidentally use up your stuff a little bit faster than you want to is navigating lap traffic. And there are a couple of very surprising names at the tail end of the running order right now. Blake, we have a pair of our Touring 12 drivers currently on the same straightaway as the race leaders, just in front of Millington and McCaskill.
And that is Brandon Pierce and Jacob Hefner. And Pierce is somebody who was very strong in the icebreaker at Florence Motor Speedway. We know the tire conservation that matters for that race. But even Pierce has said these tire conservation races work into my wheelhouse. So interesting that he has kind of fallen back to where he is right now and may be in danger of getting lapped. As you can see, the running order scroll at the top of your screen. Brandon Pierce is not a name that you would expect, even with tire saving, to be down there around 30th.
And if that is the agenda, this may be time where he's got to turn up the wick in order to stay on the lead lap. You see Bobby McCarty there in that number 6 car, working his way into the frame. That's another team for the RNS race cars. Marcus Richmond and Steve Stallings were the ones who were able to work out a deal with the multi-time champion of McCarty as Zach Miracle goes way high in 1 and 2.
Zach Miracle has had one heck of an event the last 20-some-odd laps or so. Has been sliding around, made contact with a couple of drivers. You can see him fall behind Ryan Wilson. You have to think that the damage he got from that contact with Brendan Queen is having to have a negative effect on that race car as he is plummeting through the field, and that car is just not handling to his liking right now.
The next one who sees Zach Miracle on their respective hit list was that of Tate Fogelman as they come down the main straightaway. Here's that battle. Cale Gale in the 22, the 0 of Landon Pendleton, and that 67 of Cameron Boland. Now, they only had an opportunity to break in that late model stock this past Thursday. They were able to make it out to the extended practice day that the track offered due to the ill forecast on Friday. And Boland, who admitted to both of us, Blake, he was a little bit nervous about this opportunity. So far, you can't tell if there's any butterflies in that young gun's stomach. He is doing exactly what he needs to inside the top 15.
A great run there for Boland, and running right in front of somebody who started up front right there in Minnie Tyrell, as we have 69 laps here to go at Southern National Motorsports Park. Only a couple of cars have called it quits, and that is Brian Opinski, unfortunately, who has brought it down. And we talked about him earlier in the contact that he had down into turn number 1. Back towards the front of the field, though, behind Carson Quapple running in third. You see your 6th and 7th place runners, Caden Honeycutt and Chad McCumbee. And Honeycutt, somebody who's worked his way forward. Talking to him a little bit earlier, he said this place was like Florence in terms of tire strategy. He even told me that they took their practice tires off, and there was just a big chunk of racetrack that had some crystals in it. So that's a sign of a surface that has been wearing out, and this surface is 30 years old. Back up front, though, Ryan Millington starting to lose a little bit of the advantage that he enjoyed over Deke McCaskill as we work to 65 laps to go. You can call that about a 1 or 2 car length gap between the top 2. And again, lap traffic is not too far away. You can see Jacob Hefner, another name that we didn't think we would see at this point, perhaps in danger of going a lap down.
You mentioned the surface being of age. Well, one of the drivers that may favor is the one chasing down your leader in Deke McCaskill. He considers Southern National Motorsports Park his home track. We talk about the Thanksgiving Classic, the big annual race that's held here on Thanksgiving weekend. Well, not only is McCaskill a winner here back in 2006, he's placed in the top 5 9 times in just 15 starts. Let alone the fact that he's got a couple of trophy cases full of weekly racing series wins and victories under his belt. So McCaskill is someone who may be a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to this racetrack as we hit the iRacing halfway point this time through. Ryan Millington getting a couple of extra bucks in the pocket. And you see, Blake, he's running a bit of a clear visor there at the windshield of that car. You got to bet he's straining his eyes a little bit as he goes into 1.
I love the camera shots as you can see almost their entire facial features with how bright that sun is into turn number 1. But of course, one driver that I've kept my eye on throughout this race, Eric, and that is Connor Hall. You can never write him out as somebody who came and took the series by storm last year, started all of last year, got 3 wins, was second in the points, and is somebody that time and time again, it doesn't matter what type of racetrack we go to, Connor Hall is going to have something to say about the outcome of this race.
The stat that jumped off the page for me in terms of Connor Hall was he has only made 16 starts, and in those 16 cars, late model stock starts, he qualified on the pole 4 times. That's 25% of the races he's entered, he's qualified on the pole. So when he clocked in 12th earlier today, it was a bit of a surprise, and we're seeing him start to work his way further forward. As you mentioned, perhaps that was all part of the strategy. Even take it easy in qualifying so you got more under your belt come race time.
Well, and Connor Hall, he's somebody that he kind of wanted to talk about having some more fun this year. He was almost too much business ready coming to the racetrack last year and talked about just kind of letting loose a little bit. We know that he's going to show up determined and ready to go, but wanted to take a little bit of a looser approach this year in terms to how he approached these races, but I don't think that'll slow him down at all. As Mason Diaz, you can see, leading this line of 5 cars that you could throw under a blanket right now. This is the battle for 4th. Diaz and Bobby McCarty. Now McCarty, a big run in 3 and 4, and is going to go to the inside to try to take that as Diaz checks up, and Caden Honeycutt gets the worst end of that, and I don't know why they lifted right there, but Honeycutt gets the worst end of it.
That was a bizarre set of circumstances. The race stays green, and look at all the damage on Honeycutt's cars. Now the caution flies for the competition yellow after 40 consecutive green flag laps, and that is some big-time hood damage on Caden Honeycutt's car.
And that was a strange, I don't want to call it a brake check right there. We hadn't seen them get close at all, but obviously Caden Honeycutt gets the worst end of that deal. As the competition caution comes out, and it was at a good time for Caden Honeycutt.
That hood damage reminds me of what Brendan Butterbean Queen suffered back at North Wilkesboro Speedway 1 year ago. A bit of a stack up during the race, in fact late in the race, took Brendan Queen out of a top 5 running position because the car started to overheat. Even with damage of that nature, Honeycutt and company are certainly going to want to do whatever it takes, not only to flatten the hood of that car so we can see a little bit better going off into the corner, but they've got to make sure that the radiator and the front nose of that car are clear so he doesn't develop a bigger problem in the final 55 laps of this race. A
tough deal there for Caden Honeycutt. as the second Bolt battery caution flag of the afternoon comes out here with 55 laps to go here at Southern National Motorsports Park. There was so much anticipation, Eric, that this race is just flying by for me. It's flying by for everybody. It's going so quickly. As we talked about earlier, though, some of those drivers that were in danger of going a lap down may have been a strategy play, and you could see Honeycutt pulling up to the side of Mason Diaz under caution.
Expressing a little bit of displeasure there, it appears. Perhaps gave it a couple laps for his spotter and race team to try to get a good look at how bad that damage is. If you want to try to find a silver lining, the Mike Dorn Racing logo is now clearly visible on the front end of that car. But here's what happened off the corner.
And Diaz just slows up significantly. Connor Hall got a piece of it as well. He was on the top side battling there with Bobby McCarty. You see Honeycutt just has nowhere to go. Checks up. Connor Hall gets a piece of it. Nowhere for him to go either. And that's just a bizarre set of circumstances. You can see it once again. Look at Connor Hall here. Lifts the rear tires up off of Caden Honeycutt's car.
Both of them seem to slow at a similar pace setting up to turn number 1. Quite a bizarre incident here as everybody was able to keep it straight. Connor Hall appears to have gotten away with one there as he was almost up to the fuel cell of the back end of Caden Honeycutt's car.
I wonder if we were just coming up on the competition caution. I wonder with the sun coming down in their eyes as they head off into turn number 1, if perhaps they thought, whether they saw the flagman waving it accidentally or something, that would have been the reason that Diaz lifted right there, because otherwise I can't explain it. And it wasn't a case, I don't think, of him brake checking or showing any type of displeasure because they hadn't hit each other.
Agreed, especially with the 10 car who wasn't trying to make the move down on the inside. So quite the bizarre incident to lead us up to the competition caution, but as you can see, several teams electing to come down to take advantage of the pit lane being open. One of them was a very fast qualifier, and that of Brian Wilson. You see the red and white number 2 there, right side of your picture with that Ford Mustang bodywork car. Currently, to the attention of the family-owned team, after he timed in 6th fastest, stayed up in the top 10 for most of the race, but started to struggle a little bit here as we hit the midway point.
You can see work going on the right side of the car of Jody Messimer in that 00 machine. Somebody else who's a experienced veteran here in short track racing was the 1998 Caraway Speedway mini stock track champion. So he's been at this for a number of years as Jody Messimer's. The rest of the field, we saw who else came down. We saw Isabella Robusto made a pit stop as well. The 97 is getting service at this moment of Jason Kitzmiller. And a little bit of debris you can see right there. Looks like a trash bag has ventured its way out onto the racetrack. Surprised, though, that the damage is not worse for Honeycutt. He didn't pull down to get that fixed, so the hood's bent. As long as he's not overheating, though, I think he'll be all right.
Yeah, objective number 1, make sure you can see. Objective number 2, make sure that the car is not you're not starting to see some of the temperatures go up on the gauges on the dashboard of that number 10 car from Mike Dorn Racing. And ironically, as things fall into place, we saw a bit of frustration between Honeycutt and Diaz. They're going to restart nose to tail as we check in with Jacqueline Drake, trackside.
Update from the pits here. The number 2, Brandon Pierce, came in just struggling with the handling on that Lee Pulliam performance, and they're going to try to make a few adjustments, send him back out. So earlier we saw him kind of in the back of the field there, and it was in fact handling. In addition, the number 42 came in of Carson Brown. They thought that he had a bent rear end, but they checked it. The team said it looks all good, and they sent him back out.
All right, so definitely not a strategy play there for Brandon Pierce.
Yeah, and believe it or not, we talk about some of these veteran drivers who, we like to see drivers make the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour Late Model Stock Series home. Brandon Pierce is one of them. He's in his 6th Cars Tour Late Model Stock season, and it's pretty much a bit of a newfound injection of energy and pep in his step, at least from what he was telling us at Media Day, because it's a partnership with Lee Pulliam Performance. We've highlighted Brendan Queen's success and how fast he's been, but for Brandon Pierce, it's been quite the showing. In that Lee Pulliam Performance number 2 car. At least going into the year, he seemed very optimistic, and upbeat. And this is not the start that they were looking for, but we've still got a long way to go with 55 laps remaining. if they could use some of these caution laps to dial in whatever the handling gremlins may be, maybe we'll see that 2-car cycle his way back up towards the front.
Well, one more time before we get going green here, we talk about that incident with Caden Honeycutt. The other possibility that I wasn't thinking of, but I think is a good point, that perhaps they wanted 5th on the restart, that they were checking up to get down to the bottom. And you've seen it, time and time again at NASCAR racetracks, games being played off of pit road in each of the NASCAR series, and perhaps that's the same gamesmanship that was going on there with Bobby McCarty, Caden Honeycutt, and Mason Diaz. Pace truck is off once again. 55 laps to go. Millington and McCaskill, your top 2. And what a great launch for McCaskill. Clear. We'll see if the restart stands, but for now, Deke McCaskill is gone, and Millington left in the dust there on that restart.
Through 3 and 4 they come. They'll come across the start-finish line. Looks as though the restart is cleared. McCaskill to the point with 54 laps to go. Diaz and Honeycutt nose to tail on the top lane. 24 and 10 down low. McCarty in the 6, McCumbee in the 16. Diaz falling back into the clutches of that damaged front bumper of Honeycutt as they slide off the corner with McCumbee taking the spot away from Diaz.
McCumbee wrestles that away as Brendan Butterbean Queen down on the bottom side of the racetrack, side by side. He goes with Mason Diaz, trying to get his way closer up into the top 5 of this one. You can see Honeycutt still holding strong despite the damage that he has, and Diaz able to get back down to the bottom. Honeycutt, the lone driver, left on the top side.
At this point, that front end damage has got to be acting like a bit of a parachute now that there is no car in front of him to disrupt the clean air that is hitting him as the lone soldier trying to make the top side of the racetrack work. You see Connor Hall with a little bit of a divot in the front end of his white and blue number 77 on the low side. It looks as though he did sustain some damage, but definitely not as much as Honeycutt, who squeezes between Hall and Jared Fryer to get himself back down to the bottom.
Wonder how much Jared Fryer has been saving over the course of this race, as Honeycutt still trying to hang on and hold his place up inside the top 8. Still McCaskill, your race leader, back out front. You can see he still has about a car length lead or so, call it that, over Ryan Millington, and Connor Hall is not complete with his march through the field just yet as he goes side by side with Mason Diaz.
A pair of Chad Bryant Racing teammates going door to door there with Diaz on the outside, Hall on the inside. Now here's Honeycutt drawing even with Mason Diaz for another position up here in the top 10. Honeycutt will make the pass. Diaz drops in a line. While all this is going on, we'll report the fact that Isabella Robusto has brought her Lee Falk Racing driver development team number 55 to the pit area. It appears that car may be overheating or something amiss underneath the hood. Tough break for Robusto, who will be pulling double duty all season long.
And she did pit during that last caution, so perhaps those gremlins were showing some early signs there for Isabella Robusto. We'll check in and see how she is doing in a little bit. You can see McCaskill and Millington, 46 laps to go. And, you know, Eric, this is kind of the time we talk about where you kind of have to show your stuff. If you have it, this is kind of working into that portion of the race where if you have it, you're going to have to start to showcase it. And I'm interested to see Carson Quapple, who led this race early, has drifted back a little bit, what he has in that number 8 Bass Pro Shop Chevrolet.
I think we got our answer on Robusto's car. You could see the water that was coming out of the overflow. Definitely some overheating gremlins for the Fort Mill, South Carolina native, whose late model stock car series debut for 2023 will come to an end here with about 44 laps to go after making 4 starts in 2022. Here's Brendan Butterbean Queen to the back bumper of Chad McCumbee off 4.
And this doesn't surprise me about Brendan Butterbean Queen. When we were watching even earlier this year, the Icebreaker, how far behind the pack that Brendan fell in that first run and yet stormed up and nearly found his way back up into the top 5 after spinning and qualifying. So Queen, definitely one that, at least with Lee Pulliam performance here, has really shown the ability to have that late run speed.
I know we saw Matthew Dillner walking about the grid before the engines were fired earlier, and he got to catch up with Brendan Queen at Media Day. And I'll tell you, there's a clip of this on the Flow Racing social outlets. I know Morgan Wallen came up. I know that there was some Tim Richmond stories. You want to talk about a powerful personality who's also a very talented race car driver? Look no further than Brendan Queen. He's quite the character, and he's trying to vie for a top 5 spot here with 40 to go.
Deke McCaskill still your leader. You can see some more lap traffic up the road, including Ryan Wilson, who was falling from the 6th starting spot and is hanging on. And you can see him get out of the way for your race leaders and let them settle it amongst themselves. And Deke McCaskill is somebody who would rather focus on maybe the things that he doesn't do so well. When he was on the Stickered Up podcast earlier this week, he mentioned time and time again, everybody else, they wanted to talk about how well he does at certain racetracks. And his focus was on, well, I need to get a little bit better at some other racetracks that we go to. I struggle a lot at Ace. I need to try to find a way to figure that place out. Figure out Florence Motor Speedway. I'd have to imagine, though, all the tire wear at that racetrack, if he's showing well here, I think that bodes well for Deke McCaskill, who, again, not a part of the Tour Team 12, but like you mentioned, wants to compete full-time this year. And if he does, he is a threat to win this championship.
Without a doubt. McCaskill is certainly going to be one to watch here no matter how this race unfolds, as we're starting to see that point where I think it is go time for just about the entire field. The mixed agendas that we have, we are probably just at that point in the race where everyone is on the same agenda, especially this group of cars. The leaders are now on the same straightaway as these battles that are taking place that include Zach Miracle and more. And speaking of hitting the go button, Carson Kvapil is starting to close up on the front too. And that's a lot of body work hanging off of the 04 machine down to turn number 1. And Ronnie Bassett Jr., he has ripped the nose off the right side of that car, and the hood is buckled way in.
I saw him pass us about a lap ago, but it had not turned into this, as Ronnie Bassett Jr., again, making a full-time effort in late model stock racing. But you can see that entire right side of the car is completely torn up. You have to imagine that at some point the black flag will be displayed for him to come down and try to get that fix.
At this point, Cale Gale and Cameron Boland don't necessarily know which way to go as the black flag is displayed here and the bodywork comes off the car in turn 1. That's going to be another Volt battery caution. Just as Cars Tour officials displayed the black flag for Ronnie Bassett Jr. out of Lexington, North Carolina, he loses a piece of that bodywork that was on the right side and front nose of his car. And the yellow flag will fly with about 33 laps to go.
See, the debris is somewhat settled here at the bottom of the racetrack. Kind of outside of the groove, you can see a lot of the rubber that's been kicked up over the course of this race. And not going to be an extensive cleanup. I think that's all it'll take, just picking it up and taking it out. So, quick cleanup for this Volt battery caution.
That's a good day at the office for that Cars Tour official there. Just passing it back to its rightful owner. That may be a souvenir for some of the fans that came out here, but it appears there is still work to be done. You can see the valence of the right side of that car up like a sail on a sailboat. I appear there may still be some work to be done there on Ronnie Bassett Jr.'s car, the Jerry Hunt Super Center Chevy. Bassett is someone who we've seen make several NASCAR Xfinity starts, 2 in 2022. Got an ARCA Menard Series East win under his belt back in New Smyrna in 2017, but his season opener is not off to a flying start. Let's check in with Jacqueline Drake.
One driver retiring for the night, the number 2 of Ryan Wilson. What happened for you?
Honestly, I have no excuse. We just riding early and got freight train. We were running up front, at the start. Got freight train back on the outside. Still just trying to save stuff, and still just killed our tires. So I have no excuse. We're just that bad. So I just finally parked it.
A tough afternoon for Ryan Wilson, who started off so well up in the 6th position, and is somebody who has been around for a very long time, has had some very strong runs in the Valley Star Credit Union 300 a time or two. And even his helmet that he posted on social media a little bit earlier this week, a lot of memories from him and his family racing at Caraway, Martinsville, Motor Mile. So there's a lot of pictures and whatnot on it. It's a great little story, and I think a cool design for him and that family racing operation as you continue to see the work done for Ronnie Bassett Jr.
It may have been an easy day at the office for the Cars Tour official who retrieved the bodywork that went astray. Not the case for Ronnie Bassett's team right now. They're going to try to find a way to bolt this car back together and get Ronnie back out there. I want to touch on one more thing with Ryan Wilson. How about the show of sportsmanship? The minute that he knew the handling was gone on that car and he went a lap down, he didn't put up a fight, went right to the apron and pulled it into the pits. That is veteran experience from a driver who's been around for quite some time, and he was actually riding a bit of a wave of momentum. His last race was the season finale at Caraway. In fact, both of his starts were at Caraway Speedway, and he finished top 5, came home 4th there. So you have to admire the fact, knowing everything that's at stake, that you're up against competition that is certainly, in a position of flex, if you will, and they decided that since it's not their day, not worth tearing up their stuff or anybody else's, and they yielded to the rest of the competition, at least for today.
Well, and it's been a black cloud for him at Southern National Motorsports Park. In 4 starts, he has not seen the checkered flag in 3 of those starts. So it has been a tough going for him at this 4/10 of a mile racetrack. A couple more cars are on the pit lane continuing to get service. We mentioned Isabella Robusto earlier. Minnie Tyrell right now has pulled his way down to the pit lane as well. Tate Fogelman, this past circuit around the racetrack, has come to the attention of his crew. I would imagine we would get this race going here in just a couple of laps. And I know we were talking about it a little bit earlier over the course of this run, Eric, but something's telling me that Carson Quapple and even Bobby McCarty, who's made his way up to 4th, they have something left to say here these last 33 laps.
I don't know about you, Blake, but I'm certainly hoping that everybody here at Southern National and those of you watching along on Flow Racing is getting just about as giddy as I am with these 33 laps to go, because this is the point where everything you have done up to this point comes to a collective head. It's up to everyone to see how aggressive they want to be in the waning stages. If Carson did in fact save enough, he's got to start going now. Let's hear from Jacqueline.
Down here with the 04 Ronnie Bassett Jr. And right here you can see that Jerry Hunt Super Center sponsor. If you are a Asphalt Modified fan, you may recognize that brand. It's typically on modifieds out at Bowman Gray Stadium, also here on Flow Racing. Now, many fans might be looking at the 04 team saying, why are they working so hard to get him back out with all of that damage? Right now, it's all about the points. Looking at this full season, if you're going for the title, you need to have a solid finish, and all these other cars that are now out for the evening, they can get those positions ahead.
Very good to touch on there from Jacqueline. And you think about just the latest example in the Pro Late Model race. So much happened over the course of that race in the last 20 or 30 laps or so to change up the running order, and that's what these teams do. They know every single race, every single position matters in terms of the points and chasing a championship. 32 laps to go here at Southern National Motorsports Park. Ryan Millington and McCaskill side by side for the race lead. Quapple is clear for 3rd. McCarty still stuck on the top side in that battle for 4th. And Millington now. Carson Quapple, we said he may have something left. He may just indeed do that. Is almost under Ryan Millington into turn number 1. Millington slips up. This battle is not over.
Quapple there trying to get up to the left rear quarter panel of Millington. Could not do it there. Now trying to beat him back to the power off 4. Still in the tire tracks while McCaskill breaks away. Double wide, 3 rows deep. Here's Mason Diaz following his Chad Bryant Racing teammate through on the bottom of the 24. Jacob Hefner. Where did he come from? He was about to get lapped the last time you mentioned his name.
He is storming up through the front of the field and perhaps had a trick up his sleeve. In doing so, as McCarty and Queen make contact into turn number 1. Queen scoots on by, and McCarty, who has free fallen since the drop of the green flag on this restart, falls back yet another position.
Queen was not going to be willing to leave that door open, even though McCarty wanted to slam it on shut. Just behind, another Touring 12 driver. That's Chase Burrow in the 8. Under fire from Landon Pembleton in the 0, with Jared Fryer in the frame as well. This battle all going on throughout the top 10. We're starting to see more slipping and sliding by the whole field. It's go time. Honeycutt on McCumbee.
Honeycutt with the damage, not slowing him down at all as he goes by for that 4th spot. Connor Hall is in the top 5 now as well. 27 laps to go. McCaskill has checked out a little bit, but boy, I think you hit the nail right on the head. Where did Jacob Hefner come from as he's taking another spot on Mason Diaz?
How much importance is saving your stuff to the very end? Hefner is showing us all in the Carroll Speed Shop number 95. He's up to and past Diaz to move further up the running order in the top 10, and he may not be done yet. It'll be 25 to go next time by. Butterbean Queen looking to lay a fender on Diaz in 3.
And Queen has gotten his hands dirty these last couple of laps, trying to pull up here to Mason Diaz, and Diaz may have lost the feel good in those tires as Queen goes on by. Diaz slides up the racetrack, and Queen will have that spot into turn number 3. So Brendan Butterbean Queen late on the charge as further up the road, yet another spot for Jacob Hefner.
Hefner may have perfected the art of saving his stuff to the very end. He gets by Chad McCumbee here. Move Hefner now up into 6th. Lying ahead is the top 5. Is there enough time for Hefner to continue the charge as things continue to be very physical behind him as Queen dives low on McCumbee?
And for Jacob Hefner, the 2022 late model stock car most popular driver, has just talked again and again about how close he has been to winning in the Cars Tour. Just little situations here and there have not worked out in his favor. And up the road, Caden Honeycutt now under assault from Connor Hall for 4th.
No surprise, you start to see Connor Hall's name start to climb up the running order here as we approach 20 laps to go next time by. And here's the fight for second. Quapple inside of Millington, got the fender inside in turn 1. Quapple will power his way up to and clear Millington for second spot.
And exactly what Carson Quapple needed, not only to move into second, but to do it quickly. As 20 laps to go are on the board, McCaskill is about half a straightaway ahead, but there is a ton, and I mean a ton, of lap traffic that will come into play should this continue to run out. So Quapple not out of it yet as McCumbee loses another spot to somebody else who appears to have saved his tires to the end, and Chase Burrow.
In the Pro Late Model race earlier, we saw your eventual race winner be able to maintain pace all the way up to and through to the checkered flag in Mike Hopkins. Is Deke McCaskill in a similar position? Has he perfected what it takes to be able to fend off all of these hard chargers that are cycling their way up towards the front of the pack, including that of Carson Quapple, who is the newcomer to second spot just a few laps ago, and that gap visibly appears to be closing with McCaskill in lap traffic.
We talked about how far up the road that lap traffic was. Well, it is here for Deke McCaskill, and you can see it out the window here from the broadcast booth. That gap for first and second starting to shrink between Deke McCaskill and that bright black and orange of Cason Quapple.
Here comes McCaskill getting held up a little bit there by Kitts Miller. Now goes to the high side of the number 97. Gave a little bit of a warning shot there that time as they came off the corner to Kitts Miller while Quapple tries to close.
And in the last 2 laps, it is 0.4 of a second that Carson Quapple has eaten into the race lead of Deke McCaskill. So the plan certainly to save and go at the end is paying off for Carson Quapple, but is it going to be enough? 14 laps to go, and a gap that was once about 2 seconds is now down to about 1.
Reminder to some of the new fans that may be watching, since we are inside the final 25 laps, we will not see a competition caution from here to the finish. Should the yellow flag fly, it would have to be due to an on-track incident or causation. So Quapple is not guaranteed a chance to re-rack the field here should this stay green. And McCaskill continues to wrestle his way through some of the lap cars.
And he's going to get slowed up here with Blake Lothian on his outside, not catching these lap cars in perhaps the fashion that he would like to, but the same challenge is in front for Carson Quapple. 12 laps to go. McCaskill with a clean pass on Minnie Tyrell. You could see some of the damage on his number 81 car, but it doesn't get any easier up the road for Deke McCaskill, who now has 11 laps to go.
More members of the Touring 12 up the road for McCaskill to try to overtake. That's Cale Gale, who is next to potentially go a lap down. The fluorescent orange number 4, Dylan Wilson, also racing with the 4F of Jonathan Finley as they almost come together in one, right in front of the race leader with 10 to go.
Brandon Willard is working hard with that blue flag, and Dylan Wilson will heed to it as McCaskill puts Cale Gale, Dylan Wilson, and now Jonathan Finley goes a lap down to your race leader in Deke McCaskill.
And that is not what Carson Quapple wants to see. They're double wide in front of him between McCaskill and the runner-up. Here they come out of turn number 4. Wilson yields. Finley nearly gets turned around by Cale Gale, who darts to the bottom, but Quapple 3 wide up top.
Quapple going to stuff it in 3 wide on the top side, and he's going to be able to clear Jonathan Finley. You'd imagine that Cale Gale will lift here and let Carson Quapple to the bottom. That indeed he does. And Quapple, an aggressive move to go up there 3 wide, but with just 7 laps to go, perhaps was his only hope to catching Deke McCaskill.
All the while, Caden Honeycutt has gotten up to and past Ryan Millington for the final spot on the podium. Also in your picture, Connor Hall rounding out your top 5 at a 77. This is the battle for 3rd.
And Millington peeking down to the bottom, but Caden Honeycutt, despite what he has there, the troubles he's gone through in this race, has been able to make it work. Jacob Hefner once again making up some spots. Brendan Butterbean Queen, you can see how much speed that car has with just 5 laps to go. He's definitely got some left in his tires, and Caden Honeycutt looks to have cleared for 3rd. No chance of catching your top 2, but a solid rebound and comeback here for Caden Honeycutt.
And Jacob Hefner can see 3rd, 4th, and 5th right up the road. They all rim ride around the pair of 4s on the racetrack that have just fallen a lap off the leaders. And now there is Hefner with Brendan Butterbean Queen inside. That's a race for 6, 95 and 03.
Just 4 laps to go, and that gap that we were talking about between Deke McCaskill and Carson Quapple has held steady and even started to balloon a little bit as Deke McCaskill clears the lap. Traffic and clearly had something a little bit left. 2 laps to go for Deke McCaskill.
McCaskill continues to lap his way up through the field. It's been an incredible day for some of the veterans of our sport. Making a series-leading 85th start, looking to grab another Cars Late Model Stock Tour win. Here comes Deke McCaskill to the white flag.
White flag in the air, and one more trip around Southern National Motorsports Park for Deke McCaskill. He will become the 3rd driver in series history to reach the 10-win mark, as through turns 3 and 4, Deke McCaskill wins the Per Year Tank Lines 225 and holds off Carson Quapple in this new era for the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour.
What an unbelievable job by Deke McCaskill. As we mentioned, it was not necessarily public knowledge that he may be on a path to what could be his 2nd Cars Late Model Stock Championship, should this momentum carry him through the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour season. Carson Quapple comes up to congratulate McCaskill on a well-earned victory here at a racetrack that he considers home.
And you can see the fans here. They love seeing somebody like Deke McCaskill, who has spent so much time. Again, he was winning limited late model races at this track before most of the field was born yet. In 1994, that's when he started winning races here at Southern National Motorsports Park. And this is what we love about the Cars Tour, is you have the young guns and Carson Quapple, but also these experienced veterans, and you're going to see one heck of a celebration here for Deke McCaskill, your winner at Southern National Motorsports Park.
You mentioned, Blake, you look at the career accomplishments for McCaskill. The box score may not be all that surprising that McCaskill came out here and did this here today. You mentioned the fact his 10th career win. He sits 2nd all-time in career polls and also leads the series in top 5s, 42. Count this victory, that moves it up to 43. And McCaskill is proving that perhaps, even though he has been seen as a dominant fixture in Cars Late Model Stock racing, perhaps his best year still lies ahead of him. Brandon Willard going down to greet McCaskill with the checkered flag in hand as he will celebrate for all those who've come out. And I'll tell you what, you always want to win at your sponsor's event. Per Year Tank Lines, a big supporter. Unfortunately, though, a bit of a blooper here for McCaskill. He had a perfect race right up until then.
That's the only mistake right here, is the VP Racing Fuels checkered flag sits like debris over here off the exit of turn number 4. I think he'll be okay. You know, he's allowed to make that mistake, and it allows him to wave to these fans that, again, love him so dearly at this racetrack.
Everyone's allowed a mulligan. That was Deke's mulligan for the afternoon here, no doubt. And again, Per Year Tank Lines not only put their name on this race, but also longtime supporter of Deke McCaskill's late model stock and professional motorsports career. The Raleigh, North Carolina native coming down to celebrate with quite the group of friends, family, and team members who will be greeting him in Edelbrock Victory Lane. What a way to start off your 2023 Solid Rock Carriers car's late model stock season. McCaskill back in victory lane.
This is the first time for him winning. He was mentioning on the Stickered Up podcast that he had not won at this track since 2016. And I think this is a great way to come back and get the job done right. As we're going to head down to Edelbrock Victory Lane with Jacqueline Drake and your race winner, Deke McCaskill.
Wow, the energy is high down here as Deke's going to receive congratulations from many of his teammates as well as Carson Kvapil. Deke McCaskill has won in every year of the Cars Tour existence except for one, and etching his name into that 10-win list under the series. Speaking to him a little bit earlier today, the veteran in the field, one of the oldest drivers in this young field, and he said, you know, I wanted to be a part of the Cars Tour because I wanted to switch up my life. I needed a little bit more energy, so he came into the Cars Tour in the first season. And he said it was just so much fun. We've had so many great memories here. I've had the best time with my family and my friends. And now another win here in 2023, adding to that memory. And out of the car, Deke McCaskill. Deke, congratulations. The smile on your face really says it all. But, you know, I want to ask you, Carson Kvapil was working his way right through the lap traffic just like you were. How often were you looking in that rearview mirror to see how close he was?
And they started calling lap times out, and I just ignored it and just tried to hit my marks. I got a million laps around this place. I just knew where to time the lap cars, and what an awesome way to start off the season at my home track. I mean, my name's etched up there in the grandstands. How special is that? And just a lot of great memories, man. We're just this is just a backyard team, man. We're no full-time employees, and come out here and outrun some of these guys is truly, truly special. I've been doing this a long time, and it seems like every Cars win I get, it just gets more special and more special. I mean, one Cars win, like I told you earlier, will just make your whole season. So what a race car. Brandon Ernest, we had an awesome test last Sunday at Orange County Speedway, and he put so much front turn and so much rear grip in this car. I owe it everything to him. I just appreciate all his help and support. John West Racing Engines, David West, what a motor, man. This piece was awesome. RNS Race Cars, Marcus, Tracy Richmond, all their help, man. They really turned my career around. And Per Year Tank Lines, what a great way to win up at his sponsor race. And Blackgate Hunting Products, Riding Lemons has come on board. We got a totally different paint scheme. No more blue, white, red, and black. Blackgate Hunting Products. Be sure to check them out, man. They make awesome trail cameras, and that's what we're here for. We're using racing as advertising. That's what we're trying to do here. And just appreciate Flow Racing, Cars Tour, all these new owners coming in. There's a lot of exciting things going to happen, I see in the future, and we'll see if we can stick around for it.
We were taking a look at the stat sheet, and you've added your name to the short list of drivers now in the series that has 10 wins. Where does that rate on your resume of importance to you?
Oh, it's awesome, man. The competition just steps up every year, and we're trying our best to keep up with it. And we're, like I said, my son-in-law, Hunter, he worked his butt off today and does an awesome job spotting for me. Man, I just got so many people I got to thank. Bobby Gregory Weldon, Bradley at Graphics Unlimited for doing this awesome wrap. Mel's Ignition, Racing Radios. Like I said, David West, man. My dad, he's at home watching this. He had back surgery. He wasn't able to make it, and I got him a smart TV for the first time 2 weeks ago so he could sit at home and watch it on Flow. So just appreciate all y'all, what y'all do for short track racing. You know, when I was doing this 20, 30 years ago, I never envisioned anything like this in the future. So this is really, really special.
Congratulations. Deke McCaskill's going to bring home the late model stock win at Southern National.
That he is, and what a great performance for Deke McCaskill as he gets it done. And in a couple of moments, we'll hear from a driver that came up real close to challenging Deke McCaskill for that race win. Your pole sitter here for this race, and just not enough left in the tank for Carson Kvapil, who looked those last 15 or so laps to really have something for McCaskill, and then it just all went away, and that 08 just took off.
The party continues for McCaskill, and I got to say, what does it mean for this driver who, as we mentioned, has already accomplished so much in this tour, in this series? just look at the level of mutual respect. So many drivers have come on over to congratulate. Caden Honeycutt drove up alongside. Made sure he did not go into the pit area without congratulating Deke on this victory here this afternoon. We saw Carson Quapple and many, many others come to victory lane, and then the congratulations continue on. But as you mentioned, Blake, there was one driver who came up just one spot short. He's standing by with Jacqueline Drake.
Carson Quapple finishing on the podium, receiving a little bit of a high five from his dad, Travis. But Carson, you did all you could there, just making your way through the lap traffic. But what more did you need to make it one spot better?
I think we just needed to get the traffic a little bit better. I thought we were actually, once we got all clear of traffic and stuff, I thought we were actually just a little bit faster than him. I thought our car was really, really good. And just, he was a little better through the traffic. And I don't really know what we could really do about that, but I'm still really happy to kick off the season with the Junior Motorsports guys with a pole in the second.
Absolutely. Congrats to you. Second place today for Carson Quapple.
And Carson Quapple, who talked about even coming into this race, of course, you can't win every race, but I think showing the same consistency that led him to his championship last year, which he had 14 top fives in 18 starts. I think that's a good recipe for success, and he starts with that today.
Yeah, and it's interesting when we look at some of the drivers in the final rundown. Top 3 drivers, not necessarily made up of touring 12 competitors. However, all of which may be competing for a championship in some right. We mentioned the top 3. One of them, Caden Honeycutt, also standing by with Jacqueline Drake trackside.
Caden, congrats on a podium finish today. And you talk about working your way through the field. How would you describe your race?
Honestly, I was just trying to save as much as I could, just like everybody else, and felt like I did a good job at it. Just that with that second to last caution, the 6 and the 24, we're going for an odd spot, and you know it's just a tough situation. They both wanted 5th, and that's totally understandable. It's just the way it happened. Just really sucks. It just destroyed the front of our car and destroyed the rear car. The truck arm the ball was dragging on the ground the entire time. I couldn't even see the rest of the race, hardly so. Just a great car. We managed to come home third, which showed the speed that we had. So just thank Mike Darn, Jason, Braden, Tyler, and for all the hard work. And Reynolds Racing Chassis, Speed Ranch, Quality Tire and Trucking for the help this year. And hopefully 5 more runs like this, a few more adjustments, and we're going to make this thing right and hopefully be in victory lane for the next one at Hickory.
Caden Honeycutt, your 3rd place finisher.
And I think that's certainly a 3rd place run to be proud of for Caden Honeycutt. You mentioned all the issues that he was having, and yet still obviously had something at the end to go up there and compete in a well-earned podium, I guess if we could call it that, for Caden Honeycutt.
Yeah, and obviously, Caden, you saw the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series logo in his fire suit there. We don't expect to see him run full-time, but he will run as many races as he can for Mike Darn Racing. Highest running touring 12 driver takes you to Connor Hall in 4th, and Ryan Millington caps off an incredible weekend with a 5th place finish. And Blake, before we wrap it up here, I heard Deke McCaskill send best wishes to his father. We want to echo those sentiments as well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't take an opportunity to say hello to my own father, John, who's home watching as well, fresh off some surgery. Dad, hope you enjoy the broadcast and can't wait to have you watch a whole bunch more. Hope you're healing up nicely. Blake, what a day.
What a day. And we got through it without Baby Watch coming on. So now
that I know of.
Well, that's true. So we can rest assured that hopefully that won't be an issue, and now you can focus on bringing your new kid into the world, which is going to be spectacular. I'm happy for you.
Yeah, I will say I did want to offer up to all Cars Tour competitors, now that I'm going to have a baby girl, hopefully here by next week, fandom's up in the air. Whoever wants to try to recruit her as a fan, she's free game, because she's definitely going to be at the racetrack quite often. Keely and my wife and everyone are buying all the right clothing and such to bring her to the racetrack, so I can't wait. But, man, I can't wait for another one of these. We got to wait, 2 weeks till we get to Florence? That seems like too long.
Yep, 2 weeks until we return once again with the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour to Florence Motor Speedway. And, boy, that's going to be one exciting show as well. If the Icebreaker and the South Carolina 400 is any indication, these late model stocks are going to put on one heck of a show out there. But for everybody that's a part of our broadcast crew, and for everybody watching out on Flow Racing for the first time in this Cars Tour, we thank you so much for following us along here in the Perrier Tank Lines 225. We will see you in 2 weeks' time at the Florence Motor Speedway, and until then, from our broadcast partner Eric Brennan and Jacqueline great down on pit road. I'm Blake McCandless saying so long from Southern National Motorsports Park. We bid you farewell and congratulations to today's winner of the Courier Take Lines 225, Deke McCaskill.